Chapter 51-52. On the other hand, Qin Yuan from the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island had stayed together for a few days during the sect exchange. They got along quite well. The most important thing was that Qin Yuan once complained to him about the unfair distribution of cultivation resources. Moreover, Qin Yuan's dissatisfaction with the sect didn't diminish. Instead, he became more and more resentful. Qin Yuan was a perfect target to win over. Seeing that both Bing Wuqing and Jing Taiyang had managed to rope in people to their side, and only he had not made any progress, it would be a lie if Xue Jianfeng said that he was not anxious at all. In terms of ambition, he was far more ambitious than Jing Taiyang, so he was naturally anxious to achieve success. Are you still hesitating at a time like this? Seeing Qin Yuan's expression, Xue Jianfeng couldn't help but feel a little anxious. He tried to persuade him patiently. Something happened to your uncle. You don't have any background in the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. I don't need to tell you how many cultivation resources you need to reach the Elixir realm. Do I? With your current situation in the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, do you think you have a chance, brother Qin Yuan? No. Qin Yuan shook his head decisively. At his level, the most important thing was to break through to the Golden Elixir realm. However, without sufficient cultivation resources, especially without a Golden Elixir or Golden Elixir, it would be a fool's dream. That's why I said, a tree will die when it moves, and a man will live when he moves. Since you know that there's no future if you continue like this, why do you still insist on hanging yourself on a tree until your death? Xue Jianfeng earnestly advised. That's true. But isn't he going to betray the sect? Qin Yuan still couldn't make up his mind. Even though he had a deep grudge against the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, the education he had received since he was a child was deep-rooted. To the orthodox concept, betraying the sect was almost intolerable. Most people didn't have the guts, and Qin Yuan was no exception. It's not as serious as you make it out to be. Right now you're just secretly relying on them. There's no need for you to do anything to betray the sect. No one will know. Xue Jianfeng hurriedly dispelled his doubts and tempted him. Think about it. As long as you follow me, I guarantee you'll be able to break through to the Golden Core realm in a short period of time. At the very least, you'll be able to reach Foundation Paragon in an extremely short period of time. This is equivalent to tens of years of bitter cultivation. Really? How short is extremely short? Qin Yuan's eyes lit up. One day, Xue Jianfeng was delighted. The last time he said this, Qin Yuan did not have such an excited reaction. This meant that he was not far from success. What? One day? Qin Yuan was so shocked that he almost sank into the water. He had to swallow a mouthful of water before he could recover. Brother Qin Yuan, do you know what level I am at right now? Xue Jianfeng suddenly asked in a pretentious manner. Isn't it Foundation Establishment Great Circle? Qin Yuan was stunned. He only knew that Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng had suddenly consumed elixirs to recover. Like the others, he did not know their true abilities. Xue Jianfeng snorted proudly. Taking advantage of the fact that there was no one around, he released his aura without holding back. Qin Yuan was immediately stunned. He stammered, Golden Core stage. That's right, it's the Golden Core realm. Now, you should understand what it means to follow me, right? Xue Jianfeng smiled proudly. All right, I'll go with you. Qin Yuan immediately nodded without hesitation. He had already been convinced. Now that he had seen Xue Jianfeng as a living example, there was no reason for him to hesitate. Very good, but not now. Leaving without permission will arouse suspicion. Let's wait for the rotation. Xue Jianfeng was overjoyed. 3 days later, Xue Jianfeng brought Qin Yuan to Professor Glasses. After consuming the improved elixirs produced by the center, his abilities skyrocketed, and he quickly became a Foundation Establishment Great Circle expert. However, he did not successfully break through to the Golden Core stage. After all, even Xue Jianfeng had only broken through from Foundation Establishment Great Circle to the early stage of the Golden Core stage. Qin Yuan was not as talented as him, so it was normal for him to fail to break through to the Golden Core stage. Of course, even if he did not succeed in breaking through to the Golden Core stage, As long as he consumed the improved elixirs produced by the center, Qin Yuan would be on the same boat as Bing Wuqing and the others. He would not be able to get off the boat even if he wanted to. After being on the boat, although Qin Yuan was reluctant, he had no choice but to come back and find a way to secretly recruit other seniors and juniors to join the center. Otherwise, if Professor Glasses did not give him the antidote, his life would be in danger. This is a little unreasonable. Linny saw all of this. With the intention of not interfering with each other's business, he could turn a blind eye to the fact that Professor Glasses and the others secretly recruited disciples of other far ancient sects. However, now that even the North Island's Green Cloud sect was being targeted, he could not continue to sit back and do nothing. After all, the North Island's Green Cloud sect had a deep relationship with him. They could be considered half one of his own. If Qin Yuan was the only one secretly betraying the center, it would be fine. However, the point was that he would continue to recruit other seniors and juniors. If he allowed this to continue, a large number of people might suffer in the end. That would be a huge joke. Linny wanted to get rid of Qin Yuan, but he was afraid of killing him and alerting the enemy. After thinking for a long time, he finally decided to capture him first. On this day, Qin Yuan was looking for a candidate among his seniors and juniors. He found a junior that he had a good relationship with. Just as he was about to strike up a conversation with him, he was suddenly stopped by Lin Yi. "Grand Uncle, what can I do for you?" Qin Yuan was a little flustered. After all, he had no interaction with Lin Yi. For Lin Yi to suddenly call him, that made him feel an inexplicable sense of foreboding. "Oh, I need your help with a small matter. Can you come with me?" Lin Yi said calmly. "Help? Do you want me to call Uncle Xan?" Qin Yuan asked cautiously. "There is no need. He is busy supervising the seabed mining. Don't bother him with such a small matter. You can do it alone," Lin Yi said. He did not give Qin Yuan a chance to refuse. He turned around and left. Qin Yuan hesitated for a moment. In the end, he bit the bullet and followed Lin Yi. As a traitor, he was most afraid of being seen through. In the face of Lin Yi's request, even Xanijia had to be careful with him. If he rejected Lin Yi's request, it would definitely be suspicious. For the time being, he could only take one step at a time. Fortunately, he was now a master with the great completion of the Foundation Establishment realm. Even if he could not defeat Lin Yi, who was also with the great completion of the Foundation Establishment realm, he would at least be able to protect himself. There should not be any accidents. Chapter 51-53. What? Qin Yuan was scared out of his wits when he heard that. He was horrified. How did this guy know about the center's improved version of the pill? I've already made it so clear. What's the point of continuing to play dumb? Lin Yi could not help but laugh. How did you know? Qin Yuan asked subconsciously. His joining of the center was a very secretive matter. Other than the Glasses professor, Brother Dafeng, and Xue Jianfeng, who developed him, there should not be a fourth person who knew. However, from Lin Yi's tone, why did it seem like he knew everything? The archipelago is only so big. Do you think it's flawless? Lin Yi studied the man from head to toe. At first glance, the man looked honest and kind, but it was a little deceitful. A line popped up in Lin Yi's mind. Who would have thought that a guy with thick eyebrows and big eyes would betray them? I don't understand what you mean. After Qin Yuan reacted, he carefully looked around. He did not see anyone, but he did not give up. He pretended to be calm and asked in a deep voice, "What do you want?" "Hee. You're still pretending to not want to leave behind any evidence. I really admire your spirit. You won't shed a tear until you see the coffin." Lin Yi nodded. The expression on his face was very playful. He was just short of saying that Qin Yuan's shamelessness reminded him of his youthful charm. "Grand Uncle. I only call you Grand Uncle out of respect for your seniority. This does not mean that I can tolerate your unreasonable behavior. You'd better behave yourself." Qin Yuan frowned. He checked again and again to make sure that no one would pass by. The island was not big, but there were less than 30 people gathered on the island. Moreover, they were gathered at the Two Spirit Eyes. Normally, no one would pass by such a remote place. Interesting. What if I don't behave myself? Lin Yi laughed fearlessly. Then don't blame me for being rude. As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Yuan attacked without any warning. He used his strongest attack without holding anything back. If Xianijia was on the island, he would not have the guts to do so. He might really be forced into a corner by Lin Yi. However, Xianijia was far away at the spiritual mine, so he still had a chance. As long as he killed Lin Yi before anyone found out, he would be able to do so without anyone noticing. Qin Yuan's voice was cold. His body was like a snake, and Qin Yuan's speed was extraordinary. In the blink of an eye, he was next to Lin Yi. He used a whip kick as a feint. After he attracted Lin Yi's attention, he immediately used a hidden elbow. This was his most proud move. Once he hit, he could easily break the Qi defense and crush the enemy's bones. He had succeeded. Seeing that Lin Yi did not move, Qin Yuan suddenly thought that Lin Yi had been shocked by his sudden attack. He could not help but feel happy. As long as the first move of the bone-crushing kill hit, he could immediately use the second move, the third move, and the fourth move until all of his opponent's bones were crushed. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi suddenly said, "Oh, the concept of this move is not bad. However, when you use it like this, it is really a mess." "You are talking big." Qin Yuan laughed coldly. At that moment, his elbow attack was only a hair's breadth away from Lin Yi's back. He was about to hit Lin Yi. This so-called grandmaster was nothing more than this. However, at the last moment, Lin Yi's body moved an inch to the right. He used the vital energy spray technique to put some distance between himself and Qin Yuan. His entire body immediately became like a snake, twisting strangely and extremely fast. Qin Yuan was dumbfounded. He could not help but have a bad feeling about this. Why did his opponent's movement seem so familiar? Before he could react, Lin Yi had already turned the tables on him. He used a whip kick as a feint, then followed it up with a hidden elbow attack. Crack! Qin Yuan quickly heard the sound of his ribs breaking. His entire body was instantly drowned in pain. He fell to the ground powerlessly. As he spat out blood, he struggled to say, "Bone, crush, kill." That is why I said that this kind of martial arts technique falling into your hands is like casting pearls before swine. Don't you feel bad for it? Lin Yi spread his hands. Qin Yuan was speechless. Before this, he had thought that the other party was just boasting. However, the other party had only watched it once and was able to imitate the bone crusher kill. The power of the bone crusher kill was much stronger than the original version. How could he argue with that? Qin Yuan was shocked. They were both experts who had completed the foundation establishment stage. Why was there such a huge difference in power? Qin Yuan wanted to cry, but he had no tears. If you want to fight or kill, just do it quickly. Qin Yuan resisted the urge to spit out more blood. He was paralyzed on the ground as he spoke weakly. Although he had been secretly lured by Xue Jianfeng to join the group, he still showed some courage in the face of death. If it was as simple as fighting and killing, I would have done it a long time ago. Why would I waste so much time talking to a traitor like you? Lin Yi looked at him condescendingly. What else do you want? Qin Yuan's heart went cold when he looked at him like that. The courage he had just displayed disappeared. Nothing much. Doing some research might not be a bad thing for you. As Lin Yi spoke, he suddenly squatted down and placed his hand on Qin Yuan's head. A warm wave of true energy flowed into Qin Yuan's body. Qin Yuan was scared out of his wits. It was a very dangerous thing to have true energy forcefully inserted into one's body. Furthermore, this was the head, which was the weakest part of his body. He didn't dare move. If his opponent's true energy ran amok, even if he didn't die on the spot, he would become an idiot. However, to Qin Yuan's surprise, his opponent's true energy didn't run amok. It didn't destroy his body. Instead, it gave him an indescribable feeling of comfort. It was as if it was searching for something in his body. A moment later, the warm vital energy entered Qin Yuan's dantian. What shocked Qin Yuan the most was that the vital energy forcefully forced out the poisonous gas that came with the improved version of the elixir. This was the main thing that the center was relying on to threaten them. From the moment he discovered this poisonous gas, he had been trying to force it out and neutralize it. In fact, it wasn't just him. Xue Jianfeng and the others were doing the same. However, including Bing Wuqing, who was the strongest among them, none of them were able to force this deeply hidden poisonous gas out, let alone neutralize it. Chapter 51-54. Qin Yuan nervously observed what was happening in his body. He did not even dare to breathe. He was shocked and confused. What was Lin Yi trying to do when he had suddenly taken out the poison gas that had been hidden so deeply? What happened next made Qin Yuan's heart jump out of his throat. Lin Yi's pure qi was in his dantian, and it was fighting against the poison. The two pure qi were very strong, and it made Qin Yuan's dantian turn upside down. Qin Yuan wanted to die, but he couldn't. He was in so much pain that he rolled around on the ground and screamed. Qin Yuan was in so much pain that he wanted to die. After an unknown amount of time, Qin Yuan felt as if his entire body was about to fall apart. The unparalleled pain finally faded away. After surviving the disaster, Qin Yuan's entire body was soaked in cold sweat. His entire person was exhausted. It looks like your willpower is not bad. You were able to survive this. Lin Yi was a little surprised. Seeing that Qin Yuan was confused, he said, "Since you are still alive, take a closer look at the situation in your body." Qin Yuan was stunned. When he looked at his elixir field again, his face was filled with joy. Lin Yi's warm true qi had been slowly retracted. The poison gas in the improved elixir field had disappeared. This was not surprising to Lin Yi. His 5 elements killing aura was almost invincible among all true qis. Even at the level of the 5 poison dragon, it was still very useful. Although the poison gas in the improved elixir field was difficult to deal with, it could not escape the fate of being killed. Thank you, sect uncle. Qin Yuan quickly came back to his senses and kowtowed to Lin Yi. He had thought that he was going to die. He had not expected things to turn around. Lin Yi had gotten rid of the poison gas that had threatened his life. It was very unexpected. "Why are you thanking me?" Lin Yi found it funny. "Of course, this is to thank Martial Granduncle for saving my life. In the future, this disciple will definitely follow Martial Granduncle's lead and will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire." Qin Yuan quickly expressed his loyalty. He was not a fool. Lin Yi's intentions were very clear. After discovering his betrayal, he did not kill him. Instead, he helped him get rid of the poison gas. Without a doubt, Lin Yi wanted to use him for himself. The first time Qin Yuan was dragged into this mess by Xue Jianfeng, he was still hesitant. However, this time he was very decisive. Since he could betray the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, now that the poison gas was gone, he could easily betray the center and join Lin Yi's faction. After all, if Lin Yi wanted him dead, it would be too easy. He didn't even need to do it himself. One word would be enough. "Oh, you seem to have misunderstood. I have no intention of saving you. I am just doing my research. Now that I am done with my research, it is time to send you on your way." Lin Yi curled his lips. "What? Let's go." Qin Yuan was scared out of his wits again. That day, his emotions were like a roller coaster. No matter how strong his heart was, it could not withstand such torment. Qin Yuan no longer cared about his pride. He kowtowed to Lin Yi and begged for his life. At this time, his pride had been worn away by the pain. He was willing to do anything to live. Qin Yuan was already half dead from the torture. After begging for a long time, he was lying on the ground, unable to get up. Seeing him gasping for breath, Lin Yi said, "Fine. I've always been a soft-hearted person. Since you're so sincere, I might as well spare your life." Qin Yuan looked at Lin Yi. "Really? Thank you, Martial Granduncle, for saving my life. I will never forget your kindness." Qin Yuan was overjoyed. But Lin Yi only said 3 words, and Qin Yuan's heart was in his throat again. He continued, "I can't let you go just like that. To be honest, I don't trust a guy like you who has a history of betrayal, not to mention that you've betrayed us twice in a row." Qin Yuan's face turned red when he heard this. Although it was the truth, a man needed his pride. Furthermore, he had just betrayed the sect not long ago. His skin was not thick enough to be impervious to fire and water. However, in order to survive, he quickly asked, "Please tell me." "It is very simple. The people in the center do not trust you, so they use poison gas to control you. I do not trust you either, so I have to put a curse on you, Linny coldly said. He was going to use the same method he had used on Wei Shinjin. This was the only way to deal with people like Qin Yuan. If he did not, he would be bitten by Qin Yuan sooner or later. Curse! Qin Yuan's eyes were wide open. He could not help but scream in his heart. He had escaped from the wolf's den and entered the tiger's cave. You do not want to? Then I will not force you. I will send you on your way. Linny looked indifferent. Seeing that Linny was about to attack, Qin Yuan panicked. He quickly begged for mercy. No, no, no. I am willing. I am willing. This is what I should do. Martial granduncle, please put a curse on me. Qin Yuan wanted to cry, but he had no tears. Linny wanted to put a curse on him, but he had to beg for mercy. Wasn't this fucking cheap? Linny thought it was funny. Just as he was about to put the curse on Qin Yuan, a voice suddenly came from behind him. Wait! Qin Yuan was overjoyed. His savior was here. However, before he could start to feel happy, the voice said again. With your level of skill, you have the nerve to cast goo on others. Let me do it, lest you make a mistake and embarrass yourself. In terms of attainments in goo, you are still worlds apart. Thump. Qin Yuan's knees turned to jelly, and he fell to the ground again. This roller coaster ride was full of ups and downs. His heart could not take it. The person who spoke was Lin Dongfang. Linny turned to look at him and asked, Why are you here? Nonsense, Lin Dongfang said angrily. You made this guy cry like a ghost and disturbed my afternoon nap. How could I not be here? We are 7 or 8 miles away. How could I disturb your afternoon nap? Linny was speechless. Although Qin Yuan was tormented quite badly just now, he was holding back his cries and howls. His voice wasn't that loud. It would be strange if he could still affect Lin Dongfang like that. I have good ears and eyes. Lin Dongfang snorted and casually patted Qin Yuan's shoulder. Then he said, Done. Done. Qin Yuan could not help but be stunned. He thought that the curse would be very painful. He did not expect Lin Dongfang to casually pat him, and it was over. Chapter 51-55. Impressive. Others might not have been able to tell, but Linny was a knowledgeable person. He was shocked by Lin Dongfang's move. Old Lin was old Lin. He was unfathomable. Learn from him in the future, kid. Lin Dongfang glanced at him, then looked at Qin Yuan on the ground. What do you plan to do with this guy? Qin Yuan's heart trembled when he heard that. Ling Yi's next answer would determine his life and death. Although Lin Dongfang wouldn't kill him directly, and Linny had just promised to spare his life, if Linny asked him to do something that he didn't want to do, he would still be dead in the end. What do I do? Of course, I have to go back to where I came from. Otherwise, all my efforts would have been wasted. Linny grinned. Go back to where? Qin Yuan was stunned. Ask yourself. The center worked so hard to raise you from a foundation establishment late stage to a foundation establishment full mastery. Shouldn't you repay them? Linny said with interest. How do I repay them? Qin Yuan was confused. Simple. You just have to continue working for them. Make them feel like they didn't find the wrong person, Linny said. That's it. Qin Yuan looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. Even if he used his toes to think, he knew that Linny didn't want him to continue working for the center. Oh, I understand now. Master, you want me to be a spy for you. Is that what you're trying to say? Linny nodded. Wrong. Linny shook his head. Huh. Qin Yuan was dumbfounded. He said weakly, Didn't you want me to be your spy? What do you want me to do? Other than being a spy, he couldn't think of any other reason Lin Yi would let him live. This was the best arrangement for him. After all, if the center found out about his betrayal again, he wouldn't be far from death. To be precise, being a spy is the basic condition for your survival, Linny said. If you want to fight for your future, you have to put in more effort. Future? Do I still have a future? Qin Yuan was shocked. Now that he had been reduced to such a state, he felt that it was a blessing from the heavens to be able to keep his life. He did not dare to think about more. He did not even dare to think about his future. Don't you need it? Do you think you'll be satisfied just because you've reached the Foundation Establishment Great Circle? Forget it then. Pretend I didn't say anything. Lenny said casually. No, no, no. Qin Yuan hurriedly said. Although I am not ambitious, I am ambitious. If there is anything you need me to do, just tell me. I will do my best to help you. Qin Yuan hurriedly said. That sounds pretty good. All right then. Go and trick Jing Yueming into coming here. Let him come here. Remember, don't let anyone know. Lenny immediately said. This was the real reason why he had deliberately kept Qin Yuan alive. If Qin Yuan was just a spy, it would be worthless to him. After all, he already had Big Brother Feng, who was of a higher level. Qin Yuan's greatest value was to secretly instigate a rebellion. Jing Yuming? Who is Jing Yuming? Qin Yuan was stunned. In order to ensure secrecy, the people in the center only contacted each other one-to-one. Apart from the people who were online, under normal circumstances, only the Glasses Professor and Big Brother Feng knew. The others did not know each other, and they did not meet each other. Therefore, he did not know Jing Yueming at all. Similarly, Jing Yueming did not know him. He is a disciple of the Thousand Blades sect. He is also a member of the center who secretly defected to the center, Lenny said. Although there were more than 20 Archaic Alliance experts under the control of the center, the number of targets he could instigate was very limited. After all, Jing Taiyang and the other 15 Foundation establishment experts had been brainwashed by the center's drugs. It was not easy to instigate them. Apart from Qin Yuan, there were only 4 people who stood a chance. They were Bing Wuqing, Xue Jianfeng, Qianlong, and Jing Yueming, who were also threatened by the poisonous gas in their dantian. Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng were Golden Core experts. They were not easy to deal with. The only easier targets were Qianlong and Jing Yueming. Really, Qin Yuan was delighted. He quickly nodded and said, All right, I will act now. Remember, you have to pay special attention to avoid Jing Taiyang. He is the one who developed Jing Yueming. If he finds out, you will be finished. Also, the goo that the old man gave you is not simple. No one in the world can remove it except him. If you have any distracting thoughts, you will also be finished, Lenny said, looking at him. I understand. Qin Yuan was full of confidence. He had a distant relative in the Thousand Blades sect. He had been to the Thousand Blades sect before and knew many people. Although he did not know Jing Taiyang or Jing Yueming, it should not be difficult to trick them. Looking at Qin Yuan's back, Lin Dongfang suddenly said, You are so at ease to let him go alone? What else can I do? I can't go with him, can I? Lenny smiled and said indifferently, This kid is not stupid. He cherishes his life and is afraid of death. He is the most suitable person for this kind of thing. It will be best if there are no accidents. If there are any accidents, I will just take it as a warning to the people in the center. Haha, you are quite good at comforting yourself. Lin Dongfang laughed. After half a day, Qin Yuan returned with Jing Yueming behind him. Seeing that they were walking further and further away, Jing Yueming could not help but ask, Tell me, what is the secret mission? Why did you bring me to the northern island of the Green Cloud sect? Why does Jing Taiyang have to avoid me? Jing Taiyang was his superior, and they were cousins. There was no reason that Jing Taiyang did not know about the mission. However, since Qin Yuan knew about the Glasses Doctor and the others, it meant that they were on the same side. But what kind of secret mission was this? You will know when you get there, Qin Yuan said without turning his head. Wait! Jing Yueming suddenly stopped. He looked at Qin Yuan warily and said, Who are you? Why did you bring me here? Even now, you're still doubting my identity? Qin Yuan turned around and looked at him in disbelief. Then, he continued to walk forward with an indifferent expression. If you have doubts, it doesn't matter if you go back now. No one will stop you. However, if the higher-ups ask about it later, don't blame me for telling them the truth. Chapter 51-56. This, Jing Yueming hesitated. The calmer and more indifferent Qin Yuan appeared, the easier it would be for him to believe him. Forget it. Since you look pleasing to the eye, I will say one more thing. Joining the center means you have a new start. Under normal circumstances, You will always be the one going online. That is because you will always be the one going online if you earn some merit. However, this secret mission is a rare opportunity. If you are willing to let Jing Taiyang walk all over you, then pretend I did not say anything. After Qin Yuan finished speaking, he walked away without hesitation. What Jing Yueming said hit the nail on the head. It was true that he and Jing Taiyang were cousins, and it was also true that he was Jing Taiyang's underling. However, every time he saw Jing Taiyang's arrogant look, he wanted to walk all over Jing Taiyang, but he never had the ability to do so. Now the opportunity was here. Okay, I will go with you. Jing Yueming made up his mind, and quickly followed Qin Yuan's footsteps, but he froze after a while. The people in front of him weren't the glasses doctor or Dafeng bro, but Lin Yi and Lin Dongfang. Not bad. You did not disappoint me. Keep up the good work. Lin Yi smiled. Okay, so who is next? Qin Yuan was very self-aware this time. Not only did he want to live, but he also wanted to fight for his future. Plus, this kind of thing was almost risk-free. At least it was much easier than fighting and killing. It would be a waste not to take the merit that was given to him. Ancient Five Elements Sect, Bright Dragon. Lin Yi said casually. Understood. Qin Yuan heard this and immediately set off again. Jing Yueming, who came with him, was dumbfounded. What was going on? Jing Yueming looked at Qin Yuan, who was leaving, and then looked at Lin Yi and Lin Dongfang. He was confused. You are also from the center? Lin Dongfang looked at Jing Yueming in amusement. I'm not afraid of not knowing what's good. I'm just afraid of comparing goods to goods. Before this, I didn't think much of Qin Yuan. But now I feel that you kid have a good eye. At least you aren't like this. What do you mean by silly? Jing Yueming still didn't know what was going on, and thought that Lin Yi and Lin Dongfang were the same as him. People who joined the center in secret. Especially since these two were masters that couldn't be found in the common world. The only explanation was that they'd joined the center in secret. There was no other explanation other than the center's improved elixir. Stop talking nonsense. Lin Yi did not want to explain to the idiot who had been tricked. He stepped forward and sent a 5-element murderous aura into Jing Yueming's head. Jing Yueming was only a master in the late stage of the foundational realm, so he could not fight back at all. He fell to the ground in pain and fainted. Compared to Qin Yuan, Jing Yueming was much stronger. Lin Dongfang took care of the poison in the dantian, and Lin Dongfang placed the poison into the dantian himself. The whole process went smoothly, and what happened after that was even simpler. Jing Yueming wasn't just a piece of trash. He was even more afraid of death than Qin Yuan was. Lin Yi hadn't even finished his sentence when Jing Yueming knelt down. After Qin Yuan was Jing Yueming, and after Jing Yueming was Qianlong. Lin Yi used this method to defeat them one by one. He had secretly subdued all three of them. The progress was surprisingly smooth. What are you going to do next? Do you want to find more people? Or do you want to wait? Lin Dongfang asked. Let's see how it goes. Lin Yi said after some thought. According to what he knew, the doctor and the others were very careful. Other than one-on-one training sessions, they'd also send these people to their temporary base for body checks. He didn't know if they'd find out what he'd done to Qin Yuan and the others, but he'd only be able to move forward if he passed this obstacle. Sure enough, a few days later, Qin Yuan was taken out by the bespectacled doctor alone for a physical examination. On one hand, it was to collect data and send it back to the center to improve the pills. After all, they were all human samples that were hard to come by. On the other hand, it was to monitor everyone's physical condition. If the poison showed signs of going out of control, they would be able to detect it in advance. If they found something that should not be in their bodies, they would not be able to escape from such comprehensive and strict monitoring. What Lin Yi did was not only get rid of the poison in their dantian, but he had also planted a curse in their brains. Although Lin Dongfang had done it secretly, it was still a big problem whether or not he could escape the detection of the center's high-tech equipment. Even Lin Yi was not sure about this. He could only wait for the results. Fortunately, the news that Qin Yuan brought back was good. The test results were normal from beginning to end. There were no abnormalities found. Lin Yi was still a little worried. but Jing Yueming and Qianlong reported the same results. He finally felt relieved. It seemed that the center's physical examination could not really lock onto the poison in one's dantian. It could only be discovered after the poison showed signs of going out of control. As for the faint traces of the curse, even Qin Yuan and the others could not detect it. It was reasonable that the center's high-tech equipment could not detect it. After all, it was Lin Dongfang's doing. This result not only made Lin Yi heave a sigh of relief, but Qin Yuan and the others were even more shocked. Before this, they thought that they were just unlucky to be targeted by Lin Yi. To be honest, they did not think that Lin Yi was very powerful, especially when compared to the mysterious center. They were not on the same level at all. However, after experiencing the physical examination personally, their preconceived notions were completely overturned. Lin Yi could easily get rid of the poison in the center. On the other hand, the center could not detect any abnormalities with the curse that Lin Yi had asked Lin Dongfang to plant on them. It was obvious who was superior. It looks like the situation is not bad. How is it? What's the next move? Lin Dongfang asked with interest. Since the center wants to cause trouble in the dark, let's play with them. They develop one, and we will instigate another. Let's see who wins, Lin Yi said with a faint smile. That's interesting. Apart from Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng, according to what you've said before, they're the only ones who are really using poisonous gas to control the three of them. If this goes on, you'll soon become half the boss of the center, Lin Dongfang said with a laugh. Isn't that good? With me the boss behind the scenes, they will not go around harming others. Lin Yi smiled and said, That's right, old man. I will need your help next. I cannot handle it alone. Oh, you are not thinking of attacking Xue Jianfeng, are you? Lin Dongfang guessed. Chapter 51-57. Bing Wuqing? Haha, you sure have a big appetite, kid. Lin Dongfang was overjoyed when he heard that. He had already heard that Bing Wuqing was now an expert in the late golden elixir realm. Such a level was already unimaginable in the secular world, and most people would avoid her like the plague. He did not expect that Lin Yi would actually want to subdue her in secret. Not only was his appetite big, but his courage was also frighteningly big. Don't forget that Lin Yi's current realm was only that of Foundation Establishment Great Completion. Just so. Lin Yi did not think much of it. It was true that his current strength was not as good as Bing Wuqing's. But one should not forget that his real body was at the late-stage mysterious ascension realm. His true strength was comparable to a grandmaster-level expert. Forget late-stage golden elixir. Even late-stage nascent soul would not be able to make him feel the slightest bit of fear. He would only want to subdue her even more. Then how are you going to lure him here? Are you going to send Qin Yuan or Qianlong? I don't think there's much hope, right? Lin Dongfang said with a frown. Although he had only fought with Bing Wuqing once, it was enough to tell that Bing Wuqing was not as simple as she seemed. This kind of person was completely different from Jing Yueming and Qianlong. It was impossible to lure her here for no reason. Neither. Lin Yi shook his head. Then we're going to visit him personally? Lin Dongfang asked in surprise. That's even more out of the question. We'll be too conspicuous if we go to other small islands. We'll definitely be discovered. Lin Yi shook his head even more. After the previous incident, he and Lin Dongfang had already become celebrities. Every move they made was being watched. The most important thing for this kind of thing was to be discreet. If the people in the center found out about it, then all their previous efforts would be in vain. This won't work, that won't work either. Kid, think of a way yourself. Lin Dongfang curled his lips and said, Don't worry, I've already thought of a way. But I'll have to trouble you to write a letter. Lin Yi smiled. What letter? Lin Dongfang asked. Letter of challenge. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Although Bing Wuqing seemed to be emotionless, she was definitely the kind of person who would die of pride. A person like her would never let a single failure go easily. Her crushing defeat at the hands of Lin Dongfang was a humiliation that she had to wash away. Especially now that her strength had been reborn. This fellow must have been dreaming of getting rid of that humiliation. It was just that she could not find the right opportunity. More accurately, she could not make up her mind. Lin Yi believed that as long as Lin Dongfang's letter of challenge was delivered, Bing Wuqing would definitely cast aside all her worries and come forward for the battle. After all, from the other party's point of view, he must have absolute confidence and only lacked an opportunity. Good lad, you're quite good at scheming. Lin Dongfang immediately understood Lin Yi's meaning. He immediately found a pen and paper and wrote 4 big words. If you don't accept it, let's fight again. Lin Yi picked it up and scrutinized it for a long time. Finally, he sighed. These words are so fucking ugly. Are you itching for a beating? I'm imitating the style of a famous writer. I'm blind. Lin Dongfang scolded. It's ugly, but it's still worlds apart from what I've seen on the Heaven Step Island. That's the real deal, while yours is simply unsightly. It's better to write less in the future, lest people laugh at you. Lin Yi said seriously. He was naturally referring to Shanghai Tianhua, who was one of the top calligraphers on Heavenly Island. Ordinary people could not compare to him. Lin Dongfang was furious, but before he could do anything, Lin Yi had already disappeared. He could only murmur bitterly, "Is it really that ugly? It can't be." Lin Yi would not personally deliver the letter, or it would easily attract attention. Of course, he could not let Qin Yuan and the others do it, or Bing Wuqing would easily suspect him. Therefore, he randomly found a disciple from the north to deliver the letter. After all, he was the grandmaster who even Xianijia had to be respectful to. It was just a matter of a few words. As Lin Yi expected, after Bing Wuqing received the unsigned letter of challenge, she almost did not hesitate and directly came to him. There was no one else within a radius of a few miles, only Lin Dongfang, Lin Yi, and Bing Wuqing. I didn't expect you to actually send me a letter of challenge. Bing Wuqing did not even look at Lin Yi. She directly walked towards Lin Dongfang. In her eyes, this was the only strong enemy. She was defeated in one blow, when she was in the early stage of the Gold Elixir realm. Now that her strength had been reborn, she naturally wanted to avenge herself. Wait! Lin Yi suddenly reached out to stop her. What? Bing Wuqing frowned and glanced at Lin Yi. Right now, she could not wait to fight Lin Dongfang. Anything else would be a hindrance. I have nothing to do. Why don't you play with me first? Lin Yi said with a grin. You. Bing Wuqing's disdain was written all over her face. Not to mention that she was now an expert in the late stage of the Gold Elixir realm. Even back when she was only in the early stage of the Gold Elixir realm, she would not have really taken Lin Yi seriously. After all, Lin Yi's strength was only in the foundation building realm on paper. Overestimating yourself, huh? Lin Yi did not take it to heart at all. He knew very well that with his current strength, he was no match for Bing Wuqing. His original body might have been able to fight against the late stage of the Gold Elixir realm, when he was in the foundation building realm at the foundation building realm, but it was unrealistic for this primordial spirit. However, he had not been stuck in the foundation building realm for so long in vain. This was a good opportunity to try out an ability that he had recently mastered. What do you think? Bing Wuqing still had no intention of making a move. However, she released her signature merciless ice force, which was at least tens or even hundreds of times stronger than before. Even an expert in the foundation building realm, who was in the foundation building realm, would find it hard to withstand such a heavy pressure. But Lin Yi's face was indifferent, not showing any signs of discomfort at all. He spread his hands and said calmly, "Is this considered a start?" Bing Wuqing was stunned. She did not expect Lin Yi's original body to be in existence comparable to an expert in the magnate realm. Although the merciless ice force was a special aura that was integrated with vital energy, it was still an aura at the end of the day. Suppressing a freak like Lin Yi with just an aura was not something that an ordinary expert in the magnate realm could do. A mere expert in the late stage of the Gold Elixir realm should just wash up and go to sleep. Interesting. I'll play with you then. A strange look flashed in Bing Wuqing's eyes. She moved and immediately attacked Lin Yi. Her speed was at least top-notch among experts of the same level. However, what surprised her was that Lin Yi's speed was much faster than hers. Even though she had already unleashed her full power, she could not catch up to the corner of Lin Yi's clothes. So this is all you've got? Lin Yi could not help but feel a little disappointed. Bing Wuqing's temperament was extraordinary. He had thought that she would at least be an expert who could make his eyes light up, but it turned out that she was only SOSO. Chapter 51-58. Today, he was brimming with confidence as he sought revenge on Lin Dongfang. If he couldn't even handle Lin Yi, who was merely at foundation building great perfection, then what was the point of doing anything? Before he finished speaking, an ice wall suddenly appeared around Lin Yi, forming a 1-meter-wide ice prison in the blink of an eye, trapping Lin Yi within. Oh, that's not a bad move. Lin Yi nodded. In fact, he had already sensed the vital qi fluctuations around him the moment the ice prison appeared. With his speed, it wouldn't be difficult for him to escape if he gave it his all. However, he wanted to test out his new ability, which was why he stayed behind. But then again, this ice prison of Bing Wuqing's was extremely fast. Even if an average person could react in time, they wouldn't have the speed to escape, especially when they had to face the pressure of the merciless ice at the same time. It was indeed difficult to deal with. Are you really not afraid of death? In the blink of an eye, Bing Wuqing had already arrived in front of Lin Yi. Although the ice prison wasn't indestructible, the moment the person inside broke out of the prison, he would definitely reveal a flaw, which was more than enough for her to kill him. Will you kill me? Lin Yi stood with his hands behind his back. He had no intention of breaking the ice prison at all, and just looked at her indifferently. I'll give you a word of advice. People who think they're smart usually die a horrible death. Bing Wuqing's murderous intent immediately intensified. The bespectacled professor had indeed said not to provoke Lin Yi for the time being, but he had only mentioned it once, and hadn't told them any deeper details. He could usually abide by it, but now that Lin Yi had delivered himself to his doorstep, he couldn't blame him for being impolite. At most, he would just be punished by the center afterward. Then go ahead. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Die. Before Bing Wuqing finished speaking, her hands had already turned into a pair of indestructible, sharp ice claws. They moved at an incredible speed, and a white light flashed past, piercing through the ice prison and Lin Yi's body without any suspense. Can we start now, Lin Dongfang? Bing Wuqing did not look at Lin Yi again. She turned around and walked towards Lin Dongfang. As for Lin Yi, whose chest had been pierced by her ice claws, he was already dead. Since he was already a dead man, what was there to see? However, before he could take a step forward, Lin Yi's nonchalant voice suddenly sounded behind him. Hey, isn't it a little too early for you to be so confident? How could this be? Bing Wuqing's eyelids twitched, and she subconsciously turned her head to take a look. Immediately, she was dumbfounded by what she saw. Lin Yi, whose chest had been pierced by her, was completely unscathed. There wasn't a single wound on his body. Could it be that what happened just now was an illusion? Bing Wuqing herself did not notice it, but Lin Dongfang, who was standing beside her, saw it clearly. He could not help but look a little surprised. This brat is quite good. He can switch between the primordial spirit state and the primordial spirit state in an instant, and he can even control the switch in a certain area. If used well, this is an incredible ability. It seems that these few months have not been in vain. Just as Lin Dongfang said, the moment Bing Wuqing's ice claws touched his body, Lin Yi instantly switched that part of his primordial spirit state to the primordial spirit state. Therefore, even though his chest was pierced through, he did not suffer any damage. This was the new ability that he had been trying to figure out recently. Although it was only at the initial stage, he could not completely switch between the primordial spirit state and the primordial spirit state in an instant. He could only control a small part of it for now. But even so, it was already no small matter. This could be seen from the shocked expression on Bing Wuqing's face at this moment. In theory, Bing Wuqing, a late-stage golden elixir expert, had an overwhelming advantage, be it in terms of realm or strength. After all, Lin Yi was not like he was on Heaven Stage Island now, where he could not fight an opponent of a higher realm than him. However, at this moment, it was Lin Yi who had the upper hand. The iconic merciless ice aura was completely ineffective from the start. Immediately after that, although he had trapped his opponent with an ice prison, he was not injured at all after the ice claws pierced through his chest. Faced with such a strange opponent, even Bing Wuqing could not help but feel a little helpless. How can this be? Who exactly are you? Bing Wuqing did not dare to act rashly at once. She could not help but recall the scene where she was beaten to the ground by Lin Dongfang in a single move. An inexplicable sense of foreboding began to linger in her heart, and she could not get rid of it. Leave this question for later and slowly explore on your own. All right, old man. Now it's time for you to get down to business, said Lin Yi as he clapped his hands. Brat, you sure know how to order people around. Lin Dongfang curled his lips exasperatedly. Although he said that, he did not hesitate for even a moment, and walked straight towards Bing Wuqing. Even though Lin Yi looked like he was invincible at the moment, he was still just a full-fledged foundation-building cultivator at the end of the day. At the very most, he could only contend with Bing Wuqing. As for defeating her, it was almost impossible for him to do so at the moment. Seeing that these two people did not take her seriously at all, Bing Wuqing was instantly infuriated. She was indeed shocked by Lin Yi's miraculous technique just now, but it was absolutely impossible for her to have any intention of retreating. Otherwise, she would not be Bing Wuqing. You deserve to die. Bing Wuqing immediately attacked with all her might, without holding anything back. The range of the merciless ice aura was condensed to an extremely small area, but its strength increased by more than a few times in an instant. Even the surrounding ground showed faint signs of sinking, and its power was evident. However, Lin Dongfang walked in so easily. Just like Lin Yi, he did not show any signs of being oppressed by the merciless ice aura at all. Instead, he strolled leisurely until he was 2 steps in front of Bing Wuqing, raised his hand, and threw an ordinary punch. This punch clearly looked ordinary and unremarkable. Instead, it was extremely slow, and at first glance, it didn't seem to have any strength at all. Even an ordinary hooligan would be much more ferocious and powerful than this punch. However, it was such an ordinary punch that caused Bing Wuqing's expression to change drastically. He did not manage to see Lin Dongfang's punch, clearly the last time they exchanged blows. He only felt that the punch was extremely powerful at the moment he was hit. This time, he finally saw how the other party threw the punch, but that was all. Faced with Lin Dongfang's extremely ordinary punch, Bing Wuqing was so stunned that she could not put up any resistance. It was not that she did not want to, but that she could not move at all. At this moment, her entire body had been suppressed by the punch that was as heavy as a mountain. The clearer she could see it, the more irresistible this kind of pressure was. In comparison, her merciless ice aura was like a child in the presence of a great wizard. Chapter 51-59. However, Lin Dongfang's punch didn't land on her face. Instead, he stopped at the last moment and asked calmly, "Do you still want to fight?" "There's no point in fighting anymore." Bing Wuqing shook her head with a bitter smile. This punch was enough to make her realize the huge gap in strength between them. Although she didn't know what realm her opponent was at, and didn't even know if her opponent was a cultivator, because she hadn't sensed any fluctuation of vital energy from the beginning to the end, she already knew that there was no hope for her. "Want to watch?" "That's fine. It'll be troublesome if I really injure you." Lin Dongfang nodded. He knew that Lin Yi could heal people quickly, but this punch of his would definitely injure Bing Wuqing badly. Even Lin Yi couldn't heal her in a short period of time, and it would be easy to arouse suspicion. "What do you mean?" Bing Wuqing frowned. Although she had been full of resentment ever since she was crippled, the moment she realized the huge gap between them, the resentment immediately dissipated. This was human nature. Hatred only existed between people of similar levels. Once they were on completely different levels, there would only be respect and fear left. Hatred and the like would naturally become fleeting clouds. "What I mean is that I'll give you a new boss. Why don't you consider it?" Lin Yi walked over and said with a faint smile, "Don't worry. I can deal with the poisonous gas that the center is using to threaten you." "Are you kidding me?" Bing Wuqing's face darkened. She was shocked. How did this guy know about these things? You'll know soon enough whether I'm kidding or not. Want to watch? As Lenny spoke, he reached out with one hand and used the killing aura of the 5 elements to strangle the poisonous gas hidden in the other party's dantian with ease. With Lenny at the side as a deterrent, although Bing Wuqing resisted, she didn't dare to break away from Lenny. When Qin Yuan and the others were strangling the poisonous gas, they were all in so much pain that they wanted to die. However, other than looking a little pale, she didn't make a sound. Who the hell are you? This was the second time Bing Wuqing had asked such a question in such a short period of time. She was shocked to find that the poisonous gas that had rendered her helpless had actually been cleanly dealt with by Lenny in such a short period of time. Such methods were simply unimaginable, not to mention the miraculous skills that he had displayed previously. Truly unfathomable. As I said earlier, I'll leave this question to you. I believe you won't be disappointed. Lenny couldn't help but smile. He then said, I know you were forced to join the center. Now that the threat of the poisonous gas is gone, why don't you make a new choice? Do I have any other choice? Bing Wuqing asked in return. You're smart, no? Lin Yi's answer was very straightforward. If the other party was given a second choice, then why would he waste so much effort? Ever since he arrived at this transit island, Bing Wuqing had always been one of his main targets to monitor. In the end, the result was that this person was very rational and pragmatic. She had no standpoint to speak of. This could be seen from the fact that she had agreed to join the center without any hesitation. It was precisely because of this that he had made Bing Wuqing his target. Bing Wuqing fell silent. Her gaze swept between Lin Yi and Lin Dongfang. Lin Dongfang's unfathomable abilities? Needless to say, even with his current abilities of the late Golden Elixir stage, he couldn't muster up the will to fight against him. As for Lin Yi, although he appeared to be only at the foundation building great completion, he had an endless variety of miraculous skills. He was also an unfathomable character. Faced with such an unfathomable duo, coupled with the situation, as Lin Yi had said, he indeed had no second choice. Unless he died. After a while, Bing Wuqing said, What do you want me to do? Simple. Stay in the center and be my spy, Lin Yi said. All right. Bing Wuqing agreed readily. Very good. You are indeed a sensible person. But to be on the safe side, you have to suffer a little. Lin Yi nodded, and immediately asked Lin Dongfang to cast a spell on him. This was within Bing Wuqing's expectations, no matter what she thought. No matter what he thought, he didn't show any signs of resistance on the surface. Instead, he was very cooperative. But after Lin Dongfang cast the spell on him, he was shocked again. He sighed inwardly. These two guys were indeed extraordinary. After Lin Yi had explained some things to take note of, Bing Wuqing stood up and left. But before she left, Lin Yi suddenly stopped her and threw an elixir at her. Consider this a greeting gift. Perform well in the future. Golden elixir? And of the highest grade. Bing Wuqing's eyelids twitched. The golden elixir was the dream elixir for all foundation building consummation experts and golden core experts, especially when it was of the highest grade. The impact was even greater than the improved version of the elixir he had received from the center. Although the effects were more direct and terrifying, for a knowledgeable person like him, the value of the highest grade golden elixir was definitely not small. Looking at Bing Wuqing's silhouette as she left without saying a word, Lin Dongfang suddenly said, Why are you so generous to this guy? He's worth it. Don't you think so, old man? Lin Yi asked in return. He's not bad. Lin Dongfang was non-committal, at least compared to the other disciples of the Archaic Alliance, including Xianijia, the uncle master who was leading the team. Bing Wuqing was obviously much better in all aspects. Her aptitude was also top-notch, so it was indeed worth investing some capital on her. Anyway, I don't lack elixirs. The others don't need them, and you don't want them. Just treat it as giving him a taste of the benefits first, Lin Yi said lightly. What do I want this for? What's the use of it? Lin Dongfang snorted disdainfully at his elixirs. Lin Yi was speechless. If he released any of these elixirs, not to mention in the secular world, it would cause a sensation even in the heaven-level island. But in the end, they were worthless in old Lin's eyes. Instead, he had a look of disdain on his face. He really didn't know what to say. "All right, let's talk about the next step," Lin Dongfang said casually. "All right, let's not think about Xue Jianfeng for now. Next, I plan to look for Jing Taiyang and the others to do some research. Although they are brainwashed and controlled by the center, which is not as simple and direct as the poisonous gas, they might be able to find a way," Linny said. "That would be best. After all, a total of 15 foundation building experts is not a joke. After all, this is only the secular world." Lin Dongfang nodded and said. Chapter 5160. Why did you go to the Blue Cloud clan's territory in the North Island for no reason? The doctor in glasses frowned and asked. He didn't pay attention to people like Qin Yuan at first, but Bing Wuqing was the expert he valued the most. He paid close attention to her every move, and he would know immediately if there was any sign of trouble. To challenge Lin Dongfang, Bing Wuqing said calmly. "Lin Dongfang, why did you challenge him? Didn't I tell you not to provoke Lin Yi?" The bespectacled professor jumped in fright. Lan Xiaoru had warned him over and over again not to provoke Lin Yi. This was an order from the top, and now Lan Xiaoru was challenging Lin Dongfang. Wasn't she just looking for trouble for him? "I didn't provoke Lin Yi. I just challenged Lin Dongfang." Bing Wuqing shook her head. "Lin Dongfang and Lin Yi are one and the same. Can't you see that?" The doctor in glasses was furious. He admired Bing Wuqing and was willing to give her enough freedom to do things on her own. But this matter had crossed the line, and it was even related to his own future in life. He couldn't help but get angry. Bing Wuqing remained silent. The doctor in glasses was angry for a long time before he said, Fine. I know you hate Lin Dongfang to the core. After all, you were defeated by him. Now that you're strong, it's understandable that you can't hold back your thoughts. But this is an order from the top. If anything happens, even I can't protect you. Tell me, what's the result?" Lin Dongfang's strength was also a mystery. To some extent, he was even more mysterious than Lin Yi. It wouldn't be a bad thing if they could take this opportunity to find out Lin Yi's strength. Of course, the premise was that they couldn't really provoke Lin Yi. After all, the top was still counting on them to show goodwill, and even to rope in Lin Yi. It didn't work. Bing Wuqing wasn't stupid. Since she had chosen to rely on Lin Yi, she couldn't reveal Lin Dongfang's strength. Moreover, she really didn't know Lin Dongfang's specific strength. She only knew that he was unfathomable, and she was no match for him. Why? The doctor in glasses frowned. If he doesn't accept the challenge, and Lin Yi is standing next to him, there's nothing I can do. Bing Wuqing pushed all the blame away. She was not afraid that the bespectacled professor would send someone to inquire about this matter. Even if he did, he would not be able to find out anything. After all, she had not really fought with Lin Yi or Lin Dongfang. She had only stopped where she was, and did not make much noise. No one else knew about it at all. If that's the case, then forget it. I'm still very confident in you, but remember, don't do it again, okay? The bespectacled doctor pretended to be persuasive. Yes, Bing Wuqing replied with a nod. Also, you need to put in more effort to win over the Archaic Alliance's disciples. The current progress is too slow. It's not ideal. The bespectacled doctor was halfway through his sentence when he saw Xue Jianfeng walking over. He couldn't help but be startled. He didn't summon this guy. "Leader, I have something to report in private. What do you think?" Xue Jianfeng looked at Bing Wuqing hesitantly. Then, the bespectacled doctor paused for a moment, then nodded and said, "All right, I have nothing else to tell you. Bing Wuqing, you can go back first." After Bing Wuqing had left, Xue Jianfeng said, "Leader, I think Bing Wuqing went to the Blue Cloud sect on the North Island previously. It wasn't your idea, was it?" "No, but I've already asked him." The bespectacled doctor glanced at him and said, "That Qianlong and Jing Yueming also went to the Blue Cloud sect on the North Island. Do you know about this too?" Xue Jianfeng asked. "They went too. Did Qin Yuan tell you about this?" The bespectacled doctor was shocked. If it was just Bing Wuqing alone, it would not have been a big deal. After all, the reason was sufficient. and there was nothing to be suspicious about. But now that so many people had gone to the Blue Cloud sect on the North Island, and all of them had gathered at the same time, it was necessary to be on guard. You've misunderstood. Qin Yuan might be my spy, but I, Xue Jianfeng, am still one of the top figures in the Archaic Alliance. Now that I've recovered my strength, there are bound to be some familiar faces in the various sections. It's not difficult for me to know what's going on. Xue Jianfeng deliberately showed off. Really? Then why didn't you show it before? If you have such a wide network, why did you only recruit Qin Yuan after such a long time? The bespectacled doctor frowned and said, Hey leader, you've misunderstood. This is a different matter. Although I have a wide network, and I can pass on a message when I meet them, I don't have any deep relationships with these people. How would I dare to recruit them rashly? If something goes wrong, wouldn't that be a bad thing? Xue Jianfeng explained. That's true. How are Bing Wuqing's connections? The bespectacled doctor asked. Compared to Xue Jianfeng, he obviously admired Bing Wuqing more. This was an obvious fact. Xue Jianfeng's expression froze. This time, he had specially come not just to snitch on Bing Wuqing, but mainly for himself. Although his current strength was far from Bing Wuqing's, he was not willing to always be below her. However, if the bespectacled doctor continued to develop like this, he would never be able to surpass Bing Wuqing in this lifetime. Leader, there's something you don't know. Although Bing Wuqing is stronger than me, in the archaic underworld, strength alone won't be enough to make a name for herself. It also depends on her background and connections. Not many disciples in the Archaic Alliance will respect her, because there are no benefits. Usually, they will just stay away from her. But I'm different. Xue Jianfeng smiled proudly. How so? The bespectacled doctor asked in surprise. The reason is simple. It's because my father is the vice-sect leader of the Snow Sword faction. Once he gets promoted, he will be the leader of the Snow Sword faction. You should know that the Snow Sword faction is one of the 10 small sects and clans of the Archaic Alliance. Their influence is not to be underestimated. Naturally, they will respect her, Xue Jianfeng boasted. That's true. The bespectacled doctor nodded. He was naturally aware of Xue Jianfeng's background. Previously, he did not pay much attention to him. But now that he heard this, his eyes suddenly lit up. In that case, Xue Jianfeng's value was not inferior to Bing Wuqing's at all. Strictly speaking, he was far more valuable than Bing Wuqing. Although he could not see the bespectacled doctor's expression, Xue Jianfeng could sense the change in his attitude. He was overjoyed, thinking that his trip today was not in vain. He quickly expressed his stance and said, Leader, that father of mine has always listened to me. In the future, if our center really develops into the archaic underworld, I can help to rope them in. It will also be a contribution to our center. Chapter 5161. Yes, thank you for the compliment. But I'm not strong enough now. If I could be promoted to a higher level, my words would carry more weight. By then, it wouldn't be a problem to rope in the entire Snow Sword faction, let alone my father. Xue Jianfeng said deliberately. You want to improve yourself? If the bespectacled doctor still didn't understand what he meant, he must be out of his mind. But from the perspective of a superior, he didn't mind Xue Jianfeng having such thoughts. Besides, this guy was indeed worth training. Of course, if the superior trains me well, I'll do anything for you, Xue Jianfeng said hurriedly. That's good. The headquarters has an important training program. As long as you perform well, I can recommend you to the superiors. I guarantee that your strength will improve by leaps and bounds. The bespectacled doctor promised immediately. Really? Thank you so much, superior. Xue Jianfeng was overjoyed. After thanking him profusely, Xue Jianfeng left while turning his head back every 3 steps. The bespectacled doctor chuckled meaningfully. Ambition, background, and ability. Needless to say, he's quite the material. Why do I feel that this guy isn't very reliable? Brother Dafeng came up and said. He had heard the conversation from the beginning to the end. He had seen Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng's performance. You're thinking too much. With the threat of poisonous gas, he won't dare to betray us. Besides, it's a good thing that he's ambitious, because that's why he needs the strength of our center. The bespectacled doctor glanced at him and thought to himself, "You're a traitor. How dare you say that? You're really good at pretending." Brother Doffing frowned and didn't say anything else. He was still anxious about how to contact Lin Yi. He knew that Lin Yi was definitely on the transit islands, but he couldn't go out alone. He didn't even have a chance to send a message. By the way, these people all went to the Green Cloud faction on the North Island. We have to be careful, the bespectacled doctor muttered. How? Brother Doffing asked. You don't have to worry about that. I have my ways. The bespectacled doctor snorted. The first person he had to be careful of was Brother Doffing. He could let Brother Doffing know everything on the surface, but he couldn't say anything else. A few days later, Bing Wuqing was summoned for a physical examination as usual. She didn't find anything wrong with her, but at the last moment, she suddenly felt something. Others might not feel it, but he had an extraordinary perception. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to master Ruthless Ice Force. He clearly felt that something was implanted into him. It was very subtle, but there was no doubt. He didn't know what it was, but he immediately realized that it must be a high-tech device used by the center to secretly monitor him. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to be so secretive. Bing Wuqing didn't dare to let her guard down. As the leading master uncle of the Snow Sword faction, she had to participate in the mining like the other disciples. Moreover, Lin Yi had told her before that if anything happened in the future, she could use the mining as an opportunity to communicate with him. As expected, he saw Lin Yi while he was mining, but the two didn't get too close. They waited until they reached a secluded area, and Lin Yi didn't use the opportunity to catch his breath to talk. Instead, they made a few hand gestures. He, 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 him. He, That's troublesome. Lin Yi frowned inwardly. If Bing Wuqing had something like that on her, then it wasn't hard to imagine that the others would have something similar on them as well. If that was the case, it wouldn't be realistic to continue attacking Jing Taiyang and the others. The people in the center were really alert. Lin Yi didn't dare to be negligent. This wasn't a small problem. If it had been someone else, Qin Yuan, and the others might not have been able to detect it. They might even have given themselves away. Lin Yi didn't dare to be negligent. It was a sudden crisis, but it wasn't enough to make Lin Yi panic. After all, it was just a small situation for him. It couldn't be compared to the ups and downs he had experienced on the Heaven Stage Island. Don't be nervous. Since the center is so cautious, we'll give them some face. Don't act rashly for now. Lin Yi didn't say anything, but his voice suddenly sounded in Bing Wuqing's mind. Bing Wuqing was stunned. She immediately understood that Lin Yi had used the technique of transmitting vital energy to his voice. Ordinary people might not be able to do that, but he was a golden core expert who had seen a lot in the immemorial pugilistic world. He knew this technique, but he didn't use it often. Won't they know you're transmitting vital energy to your voice? Bing Wuqing replied in the same way. She knew how to transmit vital energy to her voice, but she knew nothing about the technology of the secular world. She didn't know if transmitting vital energy to her voice could hide from these technology. Of course not. You don't understand the principle of the monitoring device. It can detect sound waves, but it can't detect vital energy waves. No matter how powerful the center is, it can't do that. This is because technology and cultivation are two things that have nothing to do with each other. To truly integrate technology and cultivation is not something that can be done in a few years or decades. It might be possible in the distant future, but it's impossible now. As Lin Yi passed on this message, he couldn't help but think of Han Jingjing. When it came to integrating technology and cultivation, this girl was definitely ahead of everyone else. After all, it was probably impossible to find a second automatic alchemy artifact in the whole world. Lin Yi's explanation was simple and clear, but Bing Wuqing didn't understand. She didn't understand the technology of the secular world, so she naturally didn't understand it. Alright, I understand. So what's next is to wait and see? Bing Wuqing asked. That's right. Let's wait and see first. If anything happens, I'll let you know. Linny nodded. Apart from Bing Wuqing, he also wanted to find an opportunity to transmit vital energy to Qin Yuan, Ken Long, Jing Yueming, and the others through transmitting vital energy to them. He was contacting these people on his own. After all, it was better to be safe than sorry. After returning from the spirit jade mine at the bottom of the sea, the first thing Lin did was to look for Lin Dongfang. He smiled bitterly and said, I've just received news that the center has started to install listening devices on Bing Wuqing and the others. It seems that they've been alerted by the fact that they've come to our island. You don't have to work anymore. Jing Taiyang and the others won't be able to make a move on us for now. Haha, that's to be expected. It's very normal. Lin Dongfang laughed. Chapter 5162. Of course it's normal. I've long guessed that the center wouldn't be easy to deal with. Back then, even your master didn't have much of an effect after fighting with the center for so long. Your little tricks are just child's play at best. Lin Dongfang smiled. Child's play. The corner of Lin Yi's mouth twitched. Whether it was from his or Lin Dongfang's point of view, instigating Bing Wuqing and the others to defect wasn't considered a big move. In the end, it was just a small squabble, but it was still different from children playing house. Why? You think I'm not? Lin Dongfang smiled and pouted. Compared to what Yang Ming had done in the past, it was not an exaggeration to say that Lin Yi's actions were child's play. Lin Yi was instantly amused. He couldn't help but ask curiously, since there's nothing to do now, why don't you tell me about my master and the center? You always kept me guessing when I asked you about these things in the past. But now that I have some strength and ability, I can't possibly continue to hide it now, right? Ever since he was young, he had asked this question countless times. Unfortunately, Lin Dongfang had never told him, always saying that he was not strong enough. Even if he told him, it would be useless. Now that he had mentioned it, he naturally had to ask out of habit. However, he did not have much hope in his heart. Unexpectedly, after a moment of silence, Lin Dongfang actually said, Fine. Since it's come to this, it's good to tell you. At least you'll know what to do in the future. Really? Lin Yi was shocked himself. He was nervous and excited as he hurriedly urged, Hurry up! Hurry up! He couldn't be blamed for losing his composure. He knew very little about these things, and had always been curious. It was almost a sore point. Now that Lin Dongfang suddenly told him, it would be strange if he wasn't excited. Alright, but where should I start? Lin Dongfang rubbed his eyebrows. From the beginning, of course. Don't keep me in suspense. Hurry up, Lin Yi said impatiently. From the beginning? How long would that take? Lin Dongfang rolled his eyes at him and said, Then let's start from the center. Do you know who the founder of the center is? Who? Lin Yi hurriedly asked. Ever since his soul projection returned to the secular world, he had always wanted to investigate the center. Aside from the teleportation method between the secular world and Heaven Stage Island, this was the most important thing he wanted to know. Only by knowing the founder of the center could he truly understand its ins and outs. Li Boyang. This person has advanced technology. The center was founded by him. Lin Dongfang said. Advanced technology? No wonder the technological prowess of the center is so strong. It's all because of this. Lin Yi heard this and immediately asked, Then why did he fight with my master? He didn't fight with your master Yang Ming at first. His biggest enemy was actually your grandfather. Lin Dongfang laughed. What? My grandfather? Do you know my grandfather? Lin Yi suddenly froze. He always thought that he was an orphan, an abandoned baby picked up by Lin Dongfang from the outside. Apart from Lin Dongfang, the only real elder was Master Yang Ming. But listening to Lin Dongfang's words, he actually knew my grandfather. Of course, your family has a deep grudge with the center. If your grandfather didn't steal the goddess that he yearned for, why would Li Boyang fight with your family? Lin Dongfang said with a smile. Ha! It can actually involve my grandfather's generation? Lenny was baffled. He thought that the grudge was at most between Li Buoyang and his master. He didn't expect it to trace back so far. Even his grandfather was involved. And he even stole the goddess of others? If you really want to talk about it, the 3 generations of your family are deeply entangled with the center. Your grandfather fought with them, your parents fought with them, and when it comes to your generation, you still have to continue fighting with them. Of course, your master Yang Ming is also fighting with them. This entanglement is not just deep, it is simply unfathomable. Lin Dongfang laughed. Old man, do you know my parents? Can you tell me about them? Lenny immediately asked impatiently, although he had no concept of parents since he was a child, and he didn't have any intuitive impression of them. The word parents had always been the most yearning and the most unreachable word for him. He always thought that he was an orphan with an unknown origin, so he didn't think too much about it. Now that he suddenly heard Lin Dongfang say this, he suddenly became excited. Even with his psychological quality, he couldn't control it. People's hearts were made of flesh. It was an innate instinct for everyone to trace back to their roots. It had nothing to do with strength. Your parents. Well, since we've already talked about it, there's no harm in revealing a few things to you. Your father is Lu Yezi. He used to be a member of the Supernatural Investigation Bureau. He is your master's best friend. Lin Dongfang said briefly. Lu Yezi? My father is Lu Yezi? Lenny quickly remembered the name. At the same time, he was shocked. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't imagine that his father was actually a member of the Supernatural Investigation Bureau and was a best friend of his master. Then he quickly asked, then what about my mother? By the way, since my father's surname is Lu, why is my surname Lin? It's very simple. It's because you followed your mother's surname. Her name is Linyi. Lin Dongfang smiled and then added, let me say one more thing. She is my adopted daughter. Adopted daughter? Lenny choked again when he heard the words. He looked at Lin Dongfang up and down again, dumbfounded. He stuttered. So aren't you my grandfather? What else do you think? Lin Dongfang said with a smile. Lenny choked for a long time and couldn't say a word. Everything from childhood to adulthood was vivid in his mind. He didn't feel anything before. But now that he thought about it, the feeling was completely different. He was speechless for a long time before he smiled bitterly. You've been hiding it from me for a long time. For so many years, he had never known what the relationship between him and Lin Dongfang was. They were not master and apprentice, nor were they grandfather and grandson. Every time he asked, there was no result. He could only muddle through without understanding. Who would have thought that the old man was actually his grandfather? Chapter 5163. Ugh, this is also true. Lenny had to smile. Although he wasn't like Shangguan Laner, Ning Xuefei, and the other young ladies who hated cultivation, he was still very playful when he was a child. Every day, he would think about going up the mountain to get bird eggs, or go down the river to catch fish. If it weren't for Lin Dongfang who had been forcing him behind his back, he probably wouldn't be able to achieve anything even if he became Yang Ming's disciple, let alone reaching the level he had today. Fortunately, you kid didn't embarrass me. You're not useless, Lin Dongfang said with a tone of relief and fear. Hey, you're my grandfather. You don't have to look down on me like this. Lenny didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He asked, oh yeah, you just said that my family is fighting with the center. What about you, old man? Are you also a sworn enemy of the center? Me, my sworn brother, who is your master, is fighting to the death with the center. My daughter and son-in-law are also fighting to the death with the center. Anyone who has even the slightest relationship with me is fighting to the death with the center. What do you think my relationship with the center is? Lin Dongfang curled his lips. So you're being dragged onto the pirate ship? Lenny teased. That's not it. I'm already on the ship. How can I be dragged onto it? Lin Dongfang laughed. That's right. Old man, you should tell me more about my parents. I've been waiting. Lenny couldn't wait to urge again. If you really want to know about these things, then wait until you see them in the future and ask them yourself. Why are you asking me? Lin Dongfang took the opportunity to keep him in suspense. Linny was speechless for a while, but then he reacted and said with surprise and joy, I can still see them? They're not dead. How can you say that? My daughter and son-in-law are all fine. Is there a son like you? You haven't even met them, and you're already cursing them? Lin Dongfang couldn't help but roll his eyes at him. No, I was just too excited. That's why I spoke without thinking. Linny shook his head repeatedly. In his imagination, since his parents had entrusted him to Lin Dongfang, it was most likely that something bad had happened to them. Otherwise, which parents in the world would casually entrust their child to someone else, even if that person was a grandfather? Now that he knew that his parents were still alive, Lin Yi's mood couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised and complicated. Noticing Lin Yi's complicated expression, Lin Dongfang explained, Don't think too much about it. There must be a reason why they placed you here. After all, only my place can be considered a rare pure land that stands aloof from worldly affairs. Yes, Linny nodded. He had always been an open-minded person. If it was someone else, they might be stuck in a dead end, but he would not think too much about it. Just as Lin Dongfang had said, since his parents had made such arrangements, they naturally had their own reasons. He would naturally know when they met again in the future. Okay, what else do you want to ask? Hurry up and ask now. I'll say this first, I won't wait for you if you're late. Lin Dongfang urged. He had already smelled the smell of Aunt Qing cooking in the distance. Compared to nagging with Linny about these things, it was obviously more important for him to eat. Well, I'll ask an off-topic question. I have asked these questions before, but you never said it. Why did you suddenly ask me so much today? Linny couldn't help but ask curiously. The sun rose from the west. Lin Dongfang said casually without sincerity. Linny was speechless and smiled bitterly. I asked so seriously. Even if you want to deal with it, can you at least be more sincere? It's too disrespectful. All right, since you've asked so sincerely, I'll be merciful and answer you with sincerity. I didn't tell you this before because your level wasn't high enough. So no matter how much I said, it would be useless. But now, although it's still useless, at least I can give you a direction to work towards. You don't have to be complacent and make no progress. Is that okay? Lin Dongfang glanced at him and said, Still not sincere, but it's more like a human. Linny chuckled. Actually, even if you didn't say that, I wouldn't have stayed where I was. My training isn't just for myself, it's for the people around me. I can't stop for them. This was the truth. Based on what he did on the Heaven Stage Island, returning to the secular world to save a group of beauties was his biggest motivation. It was also because of this that he did not dare to slack off. In just 3 years, he soared from the early stage of foundation establishment all the way to the early stage of profound ascension. This kind of miracle was difficult for outsiders to understand. Even he himself felt that it was incredible when he thought about it. Not bad, at least a little responsible. Lin Dongfang rarely praised. By the way, there's one more thing I've always wanted to ask. Linny suddenly took out the jade pendant he wore and asked. You should know what's going on with my jade pendant, right? Although he had obtained the jade pendant in a fortuitous encounter in the cave, when he gradually discovered the magic of the jade pendant, he knew that the origin of the jade pendant was definitely not simple. Moreover, from Lin Dongfang's behavior, it could be seen that the old man definitely knew about it. Moreover, it was very likely that this magical jade pendant was related to the old man. Lin Dongfang was silent for a moment, as if recalling the past. Then he slowly said, Back then your master, your father, and I traveled together in the Miaojiang Valley. There we met a very powerful science and technology doctor. His name was Sun Sikong. Wait, Sun Sikong. Lin Yi's mind flashed, and he immediately jumped in shock. Isn't Sun Sikong Jing's master? He's actually your friend? Not only that, but he's also a mad scientist under your grandfather. Back then, he came to Earth to protect your father. To a certain extent, it was his magical glasses that created your master. It was your master's starting point from the ordinary to the extraordinary. Lin Dongfang couldn't help but feel a little emotional when he said this. Thinking back, his days were full of legends like Lin Yi's. The name of the twin evils Vajra was so terrifying that people would tremble in fear. Now he was holed up in the West Star Mountain village in retirement. Thinking about it made one sigh. Then what does he have to do with the jade pendant? Linny was confused. The relationship is very simple. This jade pendant was made by him. Lin Dongfang's words were shocking. Chapter 5164. What else do you think? Not only this jade pendant, but the caves and valleys that you encountered in the past were all arranged by us in advance to fool you. Do you really think that a pie fell from the sky, and you can have a fortuitous encounter just by taking a few steps? How can there be so many fortuitous encounters in the world? Do you think you are making up a novel? Lin Dongfang curled his lips. Ugh, are you kidding me? Linny blushed with shame. But when he thought about it, he was still young and playful. If there were no fortuitous encounters, he would not have been so curious and diligent in his cultivation. This group of people really put in a lot of effort. Now you know what it means to be a parent in the world. For the sake of letting you cultivate properly, all of us have to go through all this trouble. We're all playing with you, said Lin Dongfang with a smile. Wait a minute. Since this jade pendant was made by Sun Sikong, what about Jiao Lao? What's the matter with Jiao Lao? A living person can't be made by him, right? Linny asked quickly. That's not it. That's not it. Jiao Yazi is a real person. I think he's your grandfather's martial nephew or something. Anyway, it's a mess. I don't know the specifics. You should ask them yourself in the future. In short, your entire family and your master are in big trouble, Lin Dongfang said in a low voice. Is it because of the center? Linny asked quickly. Yes, it's the center. Li Buoyang was your grandfather's classmate. This person is not to be underestimated. Sun Sikong's technology level is good enough, right? In comparison, he is not bad at all. Otherwise, it is impossible for the center to have such advanced technology. This person is a great enemy, Lin Dongfang said with a rare serious expression. Although he already knew that the grudge between his family and the center could be traced back to his grandfather's generation, Linny was still a little confused when he heard these words. He really did not expect that his family and the center would be a feud of 3 generations. In fact, until now he was still a little puzzled. There was clearly no irreconcilable hatred between him and the center. But for some reason, they always unconsciously walked to the opposite side, and always had all kinds of conflicts. He even felt that the center was troublesome because of this. But now, it seemed that this was originally a predetermined fate. In this way, from now on, Linny would no longer have to play tricks on the center. Even if he wanted to kill the center, Linny wouldn't feel any guilt. After all, this was what he was supposed to do. Now that you mention it, I'm under a lot of pressure. Although Linny smiled bitterly, the expression on his face was very resolute. In the past, it didn't matter if he didn't know about this, but now it was different. The burden on his shoulders was even heavier. Now that he had identified this powerful enemy at the center, no matter who it was, they would feel a lot of pressure. Even though he had always been fearless, he couldn't help but feel a little heavy. What pressure do you have? Lin Dongfang curled his lips disapprovingly and said with a smile. Although the center is not to be trifled with so far, they at most only pay attention to you. For the time being, they won't gather their strength to deal with a little brat like you. If you want to talk about pressure, it's on your master and your parents. They are facing the true strength of the center. Then where are my master and my parents now? Linny hurriedly asked. It was definitely impossible for them to be on Earth. Otherwise, with modern communication methods, it would be impossible for him not to receive any news. According to his speculation, they were either in another plane like Heavenly Island or in outer space. Although it sounded too unrealistic with the current technological means of the secular world, don't forget that whether it was the center or Sun Sikong, they were both far above the secular world in terms of technology. This was not completely impossible. I'm not too sure about the specifics, because I haven't been there before. Roughly speaking, it should be in another plane. Lin Dongfang's answer was just as Linny expected. The same as Heavenly Island? Lin Yi's eyes lit up. There are still some differences. As far as I know, that is the transfer point of the four-dimensional space. Because of some reason, they are now in a deadlock with the center there. As for the exact situation, I don't know. Lin Dongfang sighed and said, "Can I go?" Lin Yi suddenly felt a surge of emotions. He had never seen his parents, but he had absolute confidence in his master, Yang Ming. So he wasn't too worried about Yang Ming and his parents' situation. However, it would be a lie to say that he wasn't worried at all. Moreover, he really wanted to see his parents as soon as possible. This was human nature. "You? What are you going to do with your little strength? Run to be cannon fodder and a burden?" Lin Dongfang glared at him. Lin Yi thought that with the strength of his current Yuan Shun, a mere foundation establishment great perfection, couldn't even make a living in the Archaic Alliance, let alone run to support Master Yang Ming. He could only say, "What if it's my real body? Can I do it with the strength of the early stage of mysterious ascension? Let's not talk about whether your strength is enough or not. Even if it is, I don't know how to get there. What's the use of asking me?" Lin Dongfang shook his head and said earnestly, "The most important thing for you now is to practice hard. When you are strong enough, no matter what you do, you will be able to get twice the result with half the effort. As for the four-dimensional space, wait until you have the strength to run amok on Heavenly Island. It's still too early to talk about it now." Lin Yi hesitated for a moment, then nodded heavily. "Well, I know what to do." As Lin Dongfang said, his current strength was still obviously insufficient. Although his main body could possess the strength comparable to a magnate realm master, at the early stage of the mysterious ascension realm, this strength was far from first class, even in the heavenly stage island. He was still far from those real top masters, not to mention the mysterious and unfathomable center. One day, when he really had the strength to run amok on Heaven Stage Island, then he could really help Master Yang Ming and his parents. Although he was anxious, at the moment, he could only turn his impatience into motivation to work hard and strive to reach the next level as soon as possible. "Okay, that's enough for today. You can slowly ask them later. Come, let's go eat." After Lin Dongfang said, he was busy snatching food. Chapter 5165. Shaking his head with a wry smile, Lin Yi had no choice but to follow him. However, the old man had said enough today. At least he was no longer as clueless about his own affairs as before. He finally had a plan. He had a clear goal and direction for the future. But for now, Lin Yi had to stop his original plan. The center was so cautious that he could not continue to incite defection. He could only wait and see. However, what Lin Yi did not expect was that at the same time he stopped his instigating plan, the center's instigating plan also entered a stage of stagnation. He had not been able to recruit new disciples of the Archaic Alliance for a long time. On the one hand, it was mainly because there were only a few disciples of the Archaic Alliance who were really familiar with them. Even Xue Jianfeng, who seemed to have a wide network of people, had only managed to recruit Qin Yuan after such a long time. Even so, he was secretly instigated by Lin Yi. Needless to say, the others were even worse. No one dared to talk about this kind of thing unless they were really familiar with each other. Otherwise, if word got out, it would be the end of them. Besides, Bing Wuqing and the others had been secretly subdued by Lin Yi, so it was only natural that they did not put in any effort. On the other hand, even the doctor himself had doubts. Although there were no signs of secret betrayal by Bing Wuqing and the others after installing a listening device, the fact that Bing Wuqing and the others had gone to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island had sounded an alarm in his heart. Secretly instigating defection must be done like boiling a frog in warm water. He could not take too big a step, otherwise, it would be easy to pull the wool over his eyes. However, it was not a solution to keep this stalemate. It was right to be cautious, but if there was no progress at all, he would not be able to explain it to Lan Xiaoru when she asked. The archaic plan was a step forward that he had been planning for a long time. He could not give up halfway. Just when the doctor was at his wit's end, The envoy from the headquarters of the center of the secular world came unexpectedly, which shocked the doctor. In the past, he had always taken the initiative to report to Lan Xiaoru regularly, and this had never happened before. The central headquarters actually sent a special envoy. Could it be that Lan Xiaoru had sent him to punish him? Special envoy, what is your purpose for coming here this time? The doctor asked cautiously. The special envoy did not answer directly, but looked at Brother Dafeng next to him with some wariness. The meaning was clear. Oh, by the way, Dafeng, go and patrol the surroundings to see if there are any abnormalities. The bespectacled doctor immediately sent Brother Dafeng away. Yes, although Big Brother Feng wanted to stay and listen to what was going on, there were too many loopholes. He could only nod in agreement, thinking that if there were any secret operations, even if he didn't directly participate in them in the future, he would definitely be able to find some clues. After Big Brother Dafeng left, the envoy took out 2 letters and handed them to the bespectacled doctor. This is a secret letter from Dr. Lan to you. It's a commendation and affirmation of your achievements. He hopes that you can continue to push the primordial project to the next level and pave the way for the future. All right. Thank you for your compliment, Dr. Lan. Thank you for the trouble. The bespectacled doctor breathed a sigh of relief, but when he took the letter, he was stunned. Why are there 2 letters? In addition to the secret letter Dr. Lan gave you, there is also a letter from Heavenly Island. Dr. Lan specifically asked you to deliver it to Lin Yi under the Central Express delivery, said the envoy. A letter to be delivered to Lin Yi? Didn't the Central Express delivery suspend this service a long time ago? Why did it start again? The bespectacled doctor was surprised. He took the letter and looked at the envelope carefully. He was about to tear it open to see what was inside. However, the envoy stopped him and said sternly, "Before coming, Dr. Lan specifically told me that anything related to Lin Yi is a top secret. Anything related to Lin Yi is a top secret, including herself. No one in the Common World headquarters can look into it. This is what the higher-ups want." The bespectacled doctor choked. He remembered that Lan Xiaoru had specifically told him not to provoke Lin Yi. He couldn't help but be more curious. What was the background of this Lin Yi? Why did the higher-ups pay so much attention to him? At this moment, he felt like 100 claws were scratching his heart. The more the higher-ups were like this, the more curious he became. However, he also knew that curiosity killed people. In the end, he didn't dare to peek at Lin Yi's letter. It would be bad if he accidentally saw some shocking secret. After all, the more he knew, the faster he would die. But how should I deliver this letter to Lin Yi? Can't we just send someone to deliver it directly? Wouldn't that expose ourselves in public? The bespectacled doctor couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. Dr. Lan said that this is your problem. If you can't even handle such a small matter, then what's the point of talking about the primordial plan? The envoy relayed. The corners of the bespectacled doctor's mouth twitched. If this guy wasn't Lan Xiaoru's envoy, he would have slapped him 14,000 times just for this tone. In the end, he endured it and said in a deep voice, "Okay, I'll arrange it." After thinking about it, it was impossible for him to send this letter directly to Lin Yi. That would be equivalent to exposing himself in front of the Primordial Alliance. In the future, he could forget about the primordial plan. However, since Lan Xiaoru had given the order, he had to deliver this letter. The bespectacled doctor glanced at Big Brother Feng in the distance, and an idea came to his mind. It was not impossible to secretly leak the contents of the letter to Lin Yi through this traitor. However, after thinking about it carefully, he rejected the idea. After all, this was a letter. When the time came, he still needed Lin Yi's letter. It was not like Lin Yi could secretly send the letter through Big Brother Feng again. That would be too ridiculous. No, the central courier can't appear in this transit archipelago no matter what. This letter can only be delivered in the secular world at most. It's only reasonable for their own people to deliver it. The bespectacled doctor muttered to himself for a long time. Suddenly he slapped his head. Right, the Supernatural Investigation Bureau. Although there was no one left in Lin Yi's mansion, the Supernatural Investigation Bureau couldn't follow him in. This was an important support for him to influence and control all the cultivation forces in the secular world. As long as the letter was delivered to the Supernatural Investigation Bureau, it would naturally be delivered to Lin Yi's hands. In fact, it was just as the bespectacled doctor expected. In order to ensure the stability of the forces in the secular world, Lin Yi would come out every once in a while to notify Feng Tianlong of the Supernatural Investigation Bureau. This letter was quickly delivered to him. Lin Yi was quite surprised to receive a letter like this from Sky-class Island. Since when did the center start doing this kind of express service between Sky-class Island and the common world? Chapter 5166. It was not until he finished reading Tian Chan's handwritten letter that Lin Yi realized that the center was giving face to Okuda. She was indeed a big shot from a super family. Even the center had to treat her carefully. In comparison, Lin Yi was still far behind. In addition to expressing her concern, Tian Chan also mentioned some of the current situation of Tiandan Pavilion. Although Lin Yi frowned secretly, he could do nothing about the current situation. After all, even the cleverest housewife could not cook without rice. Without enough high-grade elixirs, the business would gradually be snatched away by Zheng Dongsheng, a 7th-grade alchemist. From the very beginning, Lin Yi had only prepared 3 months for his primordial spirit projection. According to what Southern Sky Aurora had said, 3 months was basically the limit of primordial spirit projection. Hence, the high-grade elixirs he had prepared in advance could only last him for 3 months. However, he hadn't expected that because of the starring charcoal, he would actually be able to last until now unscathed. It was within his expectations that the Heavenly Pill Pavilion would fall into a predicament. However, Tiandan Pavilion could only rely on Tian Chan and the others to continue holding on. Although Lin Yi seemed to have nothing to do in the secular world, after all, the Archaic Alliance had emerged. Moreover, the Archaic Trial was coming soon. As long as there was a chance, Lin Yi would have to explore it in person. In comparison, the predicament of Tiandan Pavilion was only a small matter. Fortunately, the Heavenly Dam Pavilion was only in a difficult situation. With the good reputation it had built in the past few years, at most, its business would shrink a little, but it would not face the desperate situation of closing down and closing down. Moreover, with the help of a big shot like Okuda, the medicine sect would at most do some shameful tricks in the dark. It would not be a serious blow. The Heavenly Dam Pavilion was still as stable as Mount Tai. As usual, this was a letter of acknowledgement. After reading it, Lin Yi immediately replied to Tian Chan and the others. In addition to introducing the situation on his side to reassure Tian Chan and the others, he also mentioned another thing in the letter, asking them to collect the cultivation methods of various sects on Heaven Stage Island. It wasn't just a whim. In fact, Lin Yi had been thinking about it for a long time. When he used the art of tranquility to subdue Exynegia, he was already thinking that he should have collected more of the sex arts if he knew about it. It did not need to be so profound and exquisite. As long as it was the entry-level cultivation method of various sects on Heaven Stage Island, then he would not only be the granduncle of the Blue Cloud sect on the North Island, he believed that no matter which archaic sect he went to, he would be worshipped as a granduncle. Especially if he wanted to further contact with the Archaic Alliance in the future, these cultivation methods of sects would be the best stepping stone. Of course, with the ability of Tian Chan and the others, it was not easy to collect the cultivation methods of various sects on Heaven Stage Island on a large scale. After all, these were the secrets of various sections. Even the most basic entry-level cultivation method would never be made public. There were only 2 ways to get it, either by bribing the internal disciples of these sects, or directly from the black market at a high price. Sitting on the Tiandan Pavilion, a money-making machine, Tian Chan and the others did not lack spiritual jade. As long as the cultivation methods of various sects were available on the black market, it should not be difficult to get them. The difficult part was the tight-lipped sects on Heaven Stage Island. If they did not even have it on the black market, then it would be a little troublesome. However, Lin Yi still said so in the letter. He believed that Tian Chan and the others would definitely help him with these things. Even if he could not buy it on the black market, he could always think of other ways. Of course, he only said that the more cultivation methods of various sects, the better. He did not say that he had to get all of them. It did not matter if he could not get them. The reply was sent quickly, because before the other party sent it, they had already said that they would come to the Supernatural Investigation Bureau to pick it up in 3 days. As for how they knew the address of the bureau, there was no need to ask anymore. After all, the bureau did not have a high degree of confidentiality. Basically, all the cultivation forces knew the location of the headquarters, so it was not difficult for the center to find out. After that, Lin Yi returned to his peaceful life. Other than practicing some practical spiritual techniques, the rest of his time was to pay attention to the situation of Ling Shan and the others. After these few months of dedicated training, with the rich spiritual qi in the surroundings, and the supreme grade foundation establishment elixir provided by Lin Yi, although the difficulty of breaking through was much higher than that of ordinary people, they had already reached the threshold of breaking through. They were only one step away from foundation building. However, this final step was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for most people. And many people were unable to take this final step, even if they spent their entire lives. This required not only natural talent and aptitude, but even more importantly, perseverance and determination. If they couldn't cut off all means of retreat, then foundation establishment was bound to be an extravagant hope that was far beyond their reach. Lin Yi knew all of this, but there was nothing he could do. He could only wait for the moment when everyone came to their senses. On the other side, the professor was getting more and more curious about Lin Yi, especially after he sent the letter away. He was constantly trying to guess who this Lin Yi really was. Unfortunately, Xiaoru had given him strict orders, and he didn't dare open Lin Yi's letter without permission, nor did he dare test Lin Yi. After all, if he made a mistake, it wouldn't just be his future, he might even lose his life. But even so, he could tell from the cautious attitude of his superiors that Lin Yi's true identity was a very powerful existence. If he could figure out a way to get to the bottom of this, he might be able to do something great. Of course, this had to be done without anyone noticing. Otherwise he'd be in big trouble if word got out. Just as the professor was hesitating, Xue Jianfeng came uninvited and asked with a fawning smile, "Sir, about the focus training program you mentioned to me last time. I wonder if it has been approved?" "Hee, you're really impatient." "Hee, you sure are impatient. The key training program means a lot of resources, and the quota is extremely rare. There aren't many people in the entire center who can get such treatment. They need to weigh all aspects and determine that you have the value of key training. You've only been there for a few days. How can you be approved so easily?" The bespectacled doctor shook his head and sneered. Yes, this subordinate is eager to make contributions and wants to quickly improve my strength so that I can rope in the Archaic Alliance for our center," Xue Jianfeng said shamelessly. Chapter 5167. Thank you for the promotion. Xue Jianfeng hurriedly expressed his loyalty. Soon after, he smiled awkwardly and said, "This subordinate has been looking for a suitable target to instigate defection recently, but because I don't have a reliable relationship, I don't dare to speak rashly for the sake of safety. However, the higher-ups can rest assured that this subordinate has always done his utmost for the center's matters. I believe there will be new developments soon." In order to surpass Bing Wuqing, he was trying his best to make a contribution. If he wasn't afraid of getting into trouble, he might have developed a bunch of subordinates. There's no rush. For the sake of safety, don't be greedy, the bespectacled professor warned solemnly. After thinking for a while, he suddenly said, "By the way, how much do you know about Lin Yi?" "Lin Yi?" Xue Jianfeng was stunned. He scratched his head and said, "I don't know much about this. I only know that he's the president of the Cultivators Association in the secular world, and also the Grand Master of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. That's all." "If that's the case, The bespectacled doctor fell into deep thought. What Xue Jianfeng had said was just the surface information, which could be easily found out. Just these two identities alone could be used to intimidate ordinary cultivators. But it would be pure nonsense to say that the entire center would be afraid of them. Is it possible that the higher-ups want to do something to Lin Yi? Xue Jianfeng observed his expression and was delighted at the same time. He hated Lin Yi to the core. If it wasn't for the higher-ups stopping him, he would have done it long ago. No, don't think too much. I'm just curious about Lin Yi's identity and background. The higher-ups have repeatedly ordered us not to provoke Lin Yi. Don't stir up trouble for me. The bespectacled professor shook his head repeatedly. Then, I'll think of a way to find out. Xue Jianfeng was eager to show off, so he volunteered immediately. You? What can you think of? The bespectacled professor couldn't help but be suspicious. Lin Yi was from the secular world. What could he, Xue Jianfeng, who came from the Archaic Alliance, find out? People always come up with ideas. As long as we try a few more times, we'll get something. Don't you think so? Xue Jianfeng smiled. But we can't mess with Lin Yi. The bespectacled doctor was still worried. Yes, we won't provoke Lin Yi. But there's no rule that says we can't touch anyone around him, right? Xue Jianfeng suggested, rolling his eyes. He didn't know about Lin Yi, but Ling Shan and the others around him should know something about him. As long as he could think of a way to pry open their mouths, he wouldn't have to worry about not getting anything. You want to start with the people around him. Hearing that, the bespectacled doctor became interested, but then he shook his head and said, "It's not realistic. Those people are now practicing in the territory of Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Lin Yi and Lin Dongfang are always together, and Xianijia is helping them. It's not easy to find a breakthrough from them. What's more, if you want to do something to them, you can't avoid Lin Yi. In the end, you still have to confront him. It's useless." That might not be the case. Xue Jianfeng pinched his chin and sneered. What do you mean? The bespectacled doctor frowned as he looked at him, not knowing what he was planning. It's hard to find a chance under normal circumstances, but it's the competition soon. If we do it right, we might have a chance, Xue Jianfeng said, pretending to be profound. Competition? The bespectacled doctor paused. That's right. This is a tradition of the Archaic Alliance. Every time before the primordial trials, there will be a grand competition. Only those with sufficient strength will be able to participate in the primordial trials. Otherwise, they'll just be throwing their lives away. Although this time's primordial trials is rather special. As long as there are no accidents, this tradition will definitely not be lost, explained Xue Jianfeng. So what? Even if it's a competition, it's your Archaic Alliance's business. What does it have to do with Lin Yi and the others? The bespectacled doctor still didn't understand. That's not difficult. Since they're already staying on the transit islands, it's not difficult to force them to participate in the competition. Xue Jianfeng smiled confidently, just like how he forced Lin Yi and the others to participate in the seabed mining last time. They just had to repeat the same trick for this competition. Moreover, any disciple who wanted to participate in the archaic trials had to pass the test of the competition first. If Lin Yi and the others had fantasies about participating in the archaic trials, it was even more impossible for them to avoid it. But even if they participate in the competition, what does it have to do with what we just said? The bespectacled doctor asked curiously. Of course it does. Think about it. The biggest problem we have now is that Lin Yi and the people around him are all holed up in the Azure Cloud Sect's territory. As long as we make a move during the competition and kill one or two of them, Lin Yi will definitely get angry with me. At that time, no matter if I lure him out or if he does something else, we'll always be able to find an opportunity. What do you think? Xue Jianfeng said proudly. The bespectacled doctor pondered for a moment and finally nodded. That's a good idea. As long as we can provoke him, we'll naturally be able to find a flaw. It'll be much easier for us to deal with the aftermath later. That's right. And this won't go against the orders from the higher-ups. 1. We didn't do anything to Lin Yi, and 2. This is the Archaic Alliance's competition. Even if we accidentally kill someone, it'll be reasonable. No one can blame anyone. Xue Jianfeng grinned. Alright, we'll do that. I'll leave this to you then. When you're done, I think your priority training spot will be approved as well. Don't disappoint me. The bespectacled doctor agreed. Yes, I'll wait and see then. Xue Jianfeng was overjoyed. He couldn't deal with Lin Yi directly right now, but dealing with Ling Shan and the people around Lin Yi would be a way for him to vent his anger. He could also use this to get into the doctor's good graces and get priority training. It was killing two birds with one stone. Half a month went by in a flash, and this half a month was full of surprises for Lin Yi and the others. Starting from Ling Shan, everyone had been breaking through to Foundation establishment one after another. Even Ziyu and the others, who were the weakest among them, had all become Foundation establishment practitioners. This was an unbelievable miracle. Lin Dongfang couldn't help but smile as he looked at everyone excitedly having a bonfire party. You really don't plan on telling them? Chapter 5168. Haha, you're quite thoughtful, kid. You're starting to sound like a boss now. Lin Dongfang gave a rare nod of praise before continuing. But speaking of which, this demi-spirit state you've been using lately is really useful. Being able to send the 5 elements murderous energy into their bodies without anyone noticing. It's not easy at all. Just as Lin Dongfang said, the reason why Ling Shan and the others were able to break through in this short half a month wasn't entirely because of their own hard work. It was mainly because of Lin Yi's secret guidance. Otherwise, even if some of them had succeeded, it'd only be a small portion, and it wouldn't have been like this. After all, breaking through was an extremely difficult thing, and unless Lin Yi directly helped them increase their strength like before, they couldn't afford to be distracted at all during the process, let alone be disturbed or affected in the slightest. As a result, even if he knew that they were all one step away, Lin Yi couldn't help them even if he wanted to. Even if he had a thorough understanding of the entire process. Even if he had already thought of a way to use the murderous energy to guide them through the last step, he still couldn't do anything about it. Once Lin Yi got close, everyone would be affected, and they'd lose that desperate state of breakthrough. It wouldn't be a matter of one step, and it wouldn't matter how much help Lin Yi gave them then. Fortunately, after this period of trial and error, Lin Yi could already familiarize himself with the demi-spirit state. This state had many uses. Not only could he avoid physical attacks like he did with Bing Wuqing, but there was also an unexpected benefit. He could freely control qi from afar. This was completely different from controlling the 5 elements killing qi after attacking in the past. Remote control of the 5 elements killing qi after attacking could at most be regarded as a kind of rough control. But it was absolutely impossible to rely on this to guide everyone to Foundation establishment. This process had to be extremely precise, and even if Lin Yi put his hand on them, he might not be able to do it, much less control it from afar. However, the demi-spirit state he'd grasped made the impossible possible. This was because in this state, as long as it was within the range of his soul, he could freely control the killing intent of the 5 elements, as if it was in his body. In particular, in this state, the senses of his soul were much more sensitive than usual. Using it to guide everyone through the final step was no longer a fantasy, but a reality. This is the result of months of hard work. If I can't even do something as simple as this, I'd cry myself to death. Lin Yi smiled faintly at the clueless crowd. Keep showing off. Lin Dongfang rolled his eyes. He'd seen everything from the beginning to the end, and knew that it was a pleasant surprise. This Lin Yi was getting thicker and thicker, and he didn't even blush when he was bragging. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile, and said with some relief, "Fortunately, everyone reached Foundation building in time, or we wouldn't be able to make it to the next trial." Exanijia had already told him about the trial, and he intended to bring everyone to the Archean trials for a share of the loot. Naturally, he'd let everyone participate in the trial, although the trial itself had no threshold, and even those with the strength of Heaven's stage could participate. They would be the weakest. Not only would they not be able to achieve a satisfactory ranking, They might not even be able to guarantee their own safety, and that would not be worth it. But then again, even if everyone succeeded in reaching foundation building, compared to the disciples of the Archean Alliance, their strength was almost at the bottom, and the situation was still not optimistic. Fortunately, they'd made up for the difference in quality, and there was a glimmer of hope. Have you really decided? Lin Dongfang asked. Yes, Lin Yi nodded and said seriously. After you told me those things, I always have a lingering sense of urgency. Not only do I have to improve my strength, but the people around me also have to think of ways to improve their strength. This time, the Archean trials is a very rare opportunity, and I don't want them to miss it. Before this, Lin Yi's attitude towards everyone participating in the Archean trials was still ambiguous, but now it was different. After knowing that the center of the trial was a powerful and omnipresent threat, if he didn't quickly improve everyone's strength, he wouldn't feel safe. If that's the case, then you have to put in some effort in this trial, or else if they only rely on themselves, it'll be difficult. Lin Dongfang raised his eyebrows. Yes, but if the thing I want can be delivered in time, it can save a lot of trouble. Lin Yi smiled and looked up and down Lin Dongfang. Don't waste your time. You can solve this trivial matter yourself. Don't always think of grabbing this old man's able-bodied men. In a few days, I still have to go back to the West Star Mountain village. Lin Dongfang quickly said. How do you know I want to grab able-bodied men? You guessed it pretty accurately. Lin Yi said surprised. Nonsense. As soon as you stick out your ass, I know what shit you're going to shit. Do I still need to guess? Lin Dongfang snorted. On Heaven Stage Island, Tian Shan and the others finally received Lin Yi's reply. When they learned that Lin Yi was safe and sound, they couldn't help but be overjoyed. They could finally relax after a few months. As for the matter that Lin Yi asked them to do in the letter, Wei Shenjin immediately went to do it. He was very familiar with the Middle Island, and it was the same for the black market. As long as there was enough spiritual jades, there was nothing that couldn't be bought. Sure enough, in just half a day, Wei Shenjin got 21 entry-level mental cultivation methods of each sect. After 3 days, the number had increased to as many as 32. Although it was still far from the number of sects on Heaven Stage Island, it was already quite a considerable number. These 32 entry-level mental cultivation methods were mainly from the sects on Middle Island and North Island. As for the other Heaven Stage Islands, they weren't included. South Island was the territory of the Spirit Beast clan, and there was no such thing as cultivating mental cultivation methods. West Island was an iron plate, and it was far from Middle Island. Naturally, the entry-level mental cultivation methods wouldn't wander into the black market of Middle Island. As for East Continent, it was needless to say that ordinary people couldn't get it at all. Even if they got it, they wouldn't have the guts to sell it in the black market. After all, the deterrent power of East Continent was not to be taken lightly. Chapter 5169. Although he could still gain something if he continued, it would definitely drag on for a long time, and the harvest would certainly not be too big. Therefore, after Wei Shenjin summarized these cultivation methods, he handed them over to Tian Shan, and then asked Okuda to send the letter out. Okuda did not feel that this was troublesome at all. Instead, he was very happy. If something really happened to Lin Yi in the secular world, he might come and help him. But since Lin Yi was safe and sound, he was still a potential stock worth trying to make friends with. This kind of small matter was naturally not a problem. If he could sell a favor with a casual greeting, he would be more than happy to do so. It had to be said that Okuda's face was really useful. The last time the center was willing to send a letter was already an exception. Now, with a casual greeting from him, Luan Sharu did not hesitate to give him the green light. But after seeing the thick stack of letters, he couldn't help but be surprised. When he opened them, he saw a variety of entry-level cultivation methods. Why did he get so much garbage? Luan Sharu casually muttered. These entry-level mental cultivation methods of various sects were worthless in her eyes. Even on the Heaven Stage Island, they were just common goods. Naturally, She would not take them seriously. She immediately sent someone to the secular world. After these things were sent to the secular world, Lan Xiaoru and the glasses doctor also muttered the same thing. However, without the permission of the main body, Lan Xiaoru, they did not dare to privately open Lin Yi's things. It was just that anyone who saw this thick stack of things would be curious. Those who did not know would think that they were recycling old newspapers. In any case, this collection of cultivation methods of the sects on Heavenstep Island was finally sent to Lin Yi. After skimming through it, Lin Yi could not help but be overjoyed. These things were just common goods on Heavenstep Island. But in his hands, especially at this critical moment when the Archaic Alliance appeared, it was priceless. Especially now, this summary of mental cultivation methods not only had long-term value, it also had the practical value of putting out a fire. Lin Yi gathered Lingshan and the others, and asked Auntie Qing to make their specialties. The group chatted and laughed around the table, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. Ziyu spoke up first. Lin Yi bro, let's just set a rule. We'll meet every 3 days from now on. Look, we just had a campfire party 2 days ago. And now we can eat Auntie Qing's specialties. How nice is that? Yes, that's how it should be. Everyone agreed with a smile. Sure, as long as you're happy. Besides, everyone has been working hard during this period. We should relax a little. Lin Yi immediately agreed. Although he had been reunited with everyone for a few months, it was rare for them to have a proper and relaxed gathering like this. At first, they had to deal with the troublemaking disciples of the Archaic Alliance. Then they had to talk to Exionegia. After that, they came to this transit island. Although they had settled down, it was a pity that everyone was either busy building the Seaview Villa or cultivating nonstop. It wasn't just Lingshan and Chintian, who were extremely responsible, but even Ziyu and the others, who didn't have much of an interest in training, acted very conscientiously here. After all, they were surrounded by Archaic Alliance disciples, and this wasn't just a simple pressure. It was more of a sense of urgency. They didn't want to drag Lin Yi down, especially when they'd been in seclusion for the past few months. They hadn't had a chance to gather with Lin Yi since the beginning, let alone relax like this. That's great. Ziyu jumped up in excitement and said something that made Lin Yi and the others smile. Why do I feel like I'm done with the exam? It's so relaxing. We've finally reached foundation after so long of closed-door training, but it's just a test. Everyone laughed. It was rare that they all succeeded, and it felt like the high school entrance exams. There were no test papers or textbooks, or they'd burn them all to celebrate. Well said, but your exam isn't over yet. Breaking through to foundation only means that you've gotten a pass. The real highlight is next. Lin Yi said, pouring cold water on them. Boss, you're talking about the test? Chintian couldn't help but ask. He was the first one to come out of seclusion, and the competition had become a common topic among almost all the Archaic Alliance disciples. You could hear about it just by walking around. It was impossible not to know. You can say that. Lin Yi nodded. He wanted to say that it was the Archaic Trials, but calling it the test wasn't wrong. If they couldn't even pass the test, then there was no point in talking about the Archaic Trials. We're participating as well. Lingshan paused, and the others were curious as well. They'd been training on their own ever since they came to the Transfer Islands, and they didn't have anything to do with the Archaic Alliance. According to what Lin Yi said, this place was their future base, and they didn't think they'd need to interact with the Archaic Alliance. That's right. According to what I know, only those who obtain a certain ranking in the trials will have the qualifications to participate in the trials of the Archaic era. This is an extremely rare opportunity, and I hope that everyone will be able to participate. Archaic trials. Everyone looked at each other when they heard this. They were completely unprepared for this, but they had always followed Lin Yi's orders. Since Lin Yi had already said so, they wouldn't have any objections. After digesting it for a while, they all nodded in agreement. That's great. They're just going to travel overseas at most, but we're going to travel outside the world. It's so much better. Ziyu was very excited. The group couldn't help but smile. Lin Yi smiled. Sure, Then you might as well write a travel book about the archaic Jianghu. I guarantee you'll be the only one in the world. Sure. But if we really go to the archaic Jianghu, will we be able to come back? Ziyu asked the question that was on everyone's mind. The Archaic Alliance's test happened once every 1,000 years, and even if they could live that long, the entire world might be gone after 1,000 years, let alone their friends and family. Chapter 5170. Then there's no problem. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief in unison. Even though they wanted to improve their strength as soon as possible, it wasn't too realistic for them to really give up everything in the mortal world for this. It couldn't be any better if they were able to freely travel between the primeval underworld and the mortal world. The competition isn't far away. Relax is relax, but we still need to familiarize ourselves with the foundational level. Don't ask for too much, just get used to it. Understand? Linny said. Boss, even if we get used to it, we're still just the weakest early phase of foundational. It's not going to be a good idea to participate in the competition with this level of strength, right? Yu Bing frowned. Everyone followed Lin Yi and had high spirits, but thinking that their opponents in the competition were all from the Archaic Alliance, they couldn't help but feel nervous. After all, they were on a completely different level. It's a bit difficult, but I got this from Tian Chan on Sky Class Island. It'll come in handy. Lin Yi smiled faintly. What is it? Everyone took the thick stack of papers from Lin Yi's hands and passed them around. A compilation of all the entry-level arts on Sky Class Island? That's right. I asked Tian Chan to get this. With this, you'll have a better chance in the competition. Lin Yi nodded. How do we use these? Could it be that they want us to cultivate these mental cultivation methods? We don't have enough time, do we? Everyone was still confused. Although there was a chance to change the cultivation method after reaching the foundation establishment stage, it wasn't something that could be done overnight. No matter how good one's aptitude was, it would be difficult to have any effect without a few months of practice. Those with average aptitude would need a few years of painstaking practice before they could have a small success. What was the use of these few days? Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not telling you to practice these arts. It's just for the competition. As for how to do it, I'll explain it to you after I finish studying it. Lin Yi shook his head with a smile. If he really wanted to find a practitioner's art for everyone, he wouldn't be looking for these common beginner's arts. He had to find a more advanced one that was suitable for everyone's characteristics. They didn't understand what Lin Yi meant, but since he wanted to keep them in suspense, they could only wait. They were the ones participating in the competition, and Lin Yi would give them some advice sooner or later. Right, big bro Lin Yi. How many people did you find on Sky Class Island these years? You haven't told us about them yet. Ziyu asked. Everyone perked up their ears. Lin Yi did tell them about his experiences on Sky Class Island, but it wasn't practical to tell them everything one by one. He could only tell them what he knew, and they were curious about Ziyu's question as well. About that, let me count. Lin Yi sighed and counted with his fingers. Tian Chan, Sydney, Han Jingjing, Wang Xinyan. There's only 4 of them now. Other than that, there's Zhong Pingliang and Xiao Ran. Zhong Pingliang betrayed us before, and Xiao Ran only got close to us after coming to Sky Class Island. Then what about Chenxi? Ziyu asked eagerly. I'm not sure. Lin Yi sighed. Chenxi had gone with Tian Chan and Tian Dai, but he'd only found Tian Chan alone on the middle island, not Chenxi and Tian Dai. It wasn't hard to guess that Chenxi and Tian Dai were separated during the teleportation. So even Tian Chan didn't know where the 2 girls were. Otherwise, Tian Chan would have mentioned it before Lin Yi even asked. Ziyu couldn't help but feel disappointed. Will something happen to her? I don't think so. Sky Class Island is huge, and it's normal that we can't find them now, but I'll find them sooner or later. Lin Yi patted Ziyu's shoulder and comforted her. On the other side, Lingshan wanted to say something as well. Lin Yi knew that she was worried about her sister, Song Lingrui, and could only give her a comforting look. Although he was comforting everyone, Lin Yi was actually more worried than Ziyu and the others. He was just forcing himself to be calm in front of everyone. After all, this was different from when he first went to Sky Class Island. At that time, he didn't know much about Sky Class Island, and he thought that the other islands would be as peaceful and stable as the North. As long as he had the chance to go out, he'd be able to reunite with these people. But now, he was all over the East, West, South, and Center Islands, and most of them were still missing. Lenny didn't care about those people who had nothing to do with him. He didn't care if they were dead or alive. But Chunxi, Tian Dai, Bingtang, and Songlingruei were people he had to find no matter what. He couldn't be at ease as long as he didn't hear from them. With that thought, Ling Yi's excitement died down. He was speechless. Even with his current strength and connections, he still couldn't find the whereabouts of these people. He didn't even dare to think about what this meant. He could only run away subconsciously. At the very least, he was sure that the North, Middle, and West Islands didn't have these people. Otherwise, Lenny would have found out already. The reason was simple. Even if they were sent to different Sky Tier islands during the teleportation process, the practitioners of each island would gather together at the beginning. Tian Chan and Shueli were at the Middle Island, Han Jingjing was at the West Island, and Lenny was at the North Island. If Chen Shi and the others were also sent to these 3 islands, they should be able to meet each other. However, another possibility couldn't be completely ruled out, and that was there might not be only one transmission point on the same island. As far as Lenny knew, there was only one transmission point on the North Island, but it might not be the same for the Middle and West Islands. He hadn't investigated it carefully, let alone the South and East Islands. However, even if this was the case, Lenny was still sure that these people didn't exist in the North, Middle, and West Islands. After all, he had a good relationship with the high-level leaders of these 3 islands. The deputy island owner of the North Island, Shanghai Tianhua, was his half-master, and the island owner of the West Island, Ning Shengling, was his future mother-in-law. The acting island owner of the Middle Island, Okuda, was also deliberately trying to make friends with him. Chapter 5171. As for the eastern and southern continents, Lenny had been there before, and he had some connections there, but his influence in those 2 places paled in comparison to the other 3. The only place he'd been to in the eastern continent was the Golden Class Ocean, and that was only in Sky Cloud, Morning Star, and Thunder Plains. He didn't know much about it, not to mention the legendary Mystic Class Ocean. There were even higher levels of oceans. Lenny doubted that any new person from the common world would be able to survive after being teleported there. Xingyan was lucky to have met the Eastern Sea's Divine Nun, but if she wasn't, then it'd be hard to say. Lenny couldn't help but think of that girl from the common world that Yao Jili had tortured. She might be one of them. If being teleported to the East Continent was considered a bad draw, being teleported to the South Continent would be the worst draw with a slim chance of survival. The South Continent sea area alone was already chaotic and dangerous, especially if they were teleported to the inland of the South Island, which was the territory of the Spirit Beast clan, which was known as the Forbidden Area for humans. Once they were teleported there, they would not survive and would definitely be killed immediately. Eastern Continent, Southern Continent, no matter where they were teleported to, it wouldn't be good news. But if they weren't teleported to these 2 places, then the news would be even worse. If they were teleported to the North, Middle, and West Islands, and there was no news from them, then there was only one worst-case scenario. They'd all met with misfortune. Even Lin, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat at the thought. People were like that. Once they were down, it was easy for them to get stuck in a dead end, unable to pull themselves out. The more they thought about it, the more wrong they'd get. And in the end, they'd really be stuck in a dead end. Lenny, are you alright? Ling Shan and the others looked at each other, worried at Lin Yi's face. Lenny had always been so confident and optimistic in front of them. What was going on? Oh, I'm fine, just a little distracted. Lenny smiled dryly. Really? The others were still worried. It's true. Lenny nodded. He didn't dare to tell everyone the truth. After all, everything was just speculation, before he got the exact information. He didn't want everyone to worry for nothing. After this incident, everyone's mood was more or less dampened. The originally joyous gathering had to come to an abrupt end, and Ling Shan and the others dispersed to rest. Lin Yi, however, was stopped by Dongfang. You want to slip away after eating? Do you think this is a restaurant? Go and wash the dishes. Lin Dongfang curled his lips in annoyance. Lin Yi glanced at the table full of empty plates, and suddenly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Just now, everyone was frowning, but their mouths weren't idle at all. They licked the plates quite clean. What are you waiting for? Wash the dishes. Dongfang was still rushing him, but he suddenly said, There's nothing to worry about, they won't die yet. The words came out of nowhere, but Lin Yi understood immediately that the old man was comforting him. He smiled bitterly. I'll accept your words of comfort, but I know what I'm doing. It doesn't look too good. Know what? What do you know? Dongfang laughed. I haven't found any news of them yet, but I've been on Sky-class Island for 3 years, and I've made a name for myself. Even if I haven't confirmed some things, I can still make deductions. Lin Yi sighed. He had to force a smile in front of Ling Shan and the others, but there was no need for it in front of old Lin. That's a deduction and mine is a divination. Which one do you think is more accurate? Dongfang said with interest. Divination? What divination? Lin Yi blinked. You don't even know about divination? You're pretty ignorant. Dongfang said disdainfully. Wait, isn't divination a superstition? How can you believe in something like that? Lin Yi couldn't help but be surprised. Who told you that divination is a superstition? You're calling something you don't know superstition? You're not at a low level anymore. Can you not be so childish? Dongfang curled his lips and explained. Listen up. Divination is a very mysterious ancient art. It's hard to say that it's 100% accurate every time. But if it's done by a master, then it's very trustworthy. Ancient art? That's real? Lin Yi's face was full of shock. Something as mysterious as divination was like the talk of ghosts and gods in the eyes of normal people. Even he had always thought that it was just a trick to fool old men and old women. He didn't think that Lin Dongfang would actually say that there was such a thing. Remember, don't jump to conclusions about things that you haven't seen with your own eyes. I can tell you very clearly that divination does exist. However, the number of experts who have truly mastered this ancient secret technique can be counted on one hand. Lin Dongfang said with a serious expression. Yes, I'll remember that. Lin Yi nodded solemnly. But what does this have to do with Chen Shi and the others? You're saying that a master has divined their fates? That's right. From the results of the divination, their lives aren't in danger yet, so you don't have to worry. Dongfang nodded. That's good, that's good. Lin Yi finally let out a breath of relief, but he was still curious. Speaking of which, where did you find this fortune teller, sir? Why don't you introduce me to him, and let me broaden my horizons? It's about luck to meet such a master. The luck hasn't come yet. Just wait. Lin Dongfang said insincerely. In fact, Lin Yi had already met him before. Lin Yi had already believed it, but now he was starting to wonder again. What opportunity? You didn't make this up to tease me, did you? It's up to you to believe it or not. Lin Dongfang rolled his eyes at him and urged. Hurry up and wash the dishes. Don't be so slow. Are you dawdling? Before he finished, Aunt Qing suddenly shouted. Don't even think about being lazy. We'll wash the dishes together. Aunt Qing is wise. Lin Yi hurriedly flattered the old man, amused by the look of resentment on old Lin's face. Everything had its counter after all. 5 days passed in a flash. On this day, Exionejia deliberately suspended the seabed mining and gathered all the disciples of the Archaic Alliance, including the apprentices, except for Lin Dongfang and Aunt Qing, who went back to the West Star Mountain village to drink water. Lin Yi and the others also attended. Chapter 5172. Everyone had expected this. They were all excited and rubbed their palms together, eager to give it a try. Hee hee. The trial competition is an old tradition of the Archaic Alliance. I'm sure everyone is familiar with it. However, it's the first time for some of the disciples, so I'll have to explain to everyone what the trial competition is. Exaenegia smiled and continued. The trial competition, as the name suggests, is a preparation for the primordial trial. The purpose of this competition is to see if everyone's strength is qualified to participate in the primordial trial. This is also for everyone's safety. After all, the primordial trial is very dangerous. If you're not strong enough, you might die in vain. Martial Uncle Exaen, may I know how to be considered strong enough? Could it be that there's a realm of strength? Only those who are above this realm are qualified, and those who are below this realm are not qualified to participate in the archaic trials? Someone asked impatiently. That's not the case. Even though it's simple and clear, it doesn't conform to the objective of our primeval trials. Everyone must remember that the primeval trials isn't a simple trial. It only exists for a single purpose, and that is to allow those disciples with true strength to distinguish themselves and become the important fostered targets of the various primeval sects and clans. Exaenegia paused and added, of course, the strength I'm talking about doesn't just refer to the realm. More importantly, it's also about the potential. You should know that a genius with outstanding potential, even if he's only in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, is definitely not any less valuable than a foundation establishment realm expert in the perfected foundation establishment realm. Then how do we determine the potential and talent? Do we look at the spiritual root? Everyone asked. The spiritual root is only one aspect. It's too narrow to only look at the spiritual root. After all, there are many so-called geniuses with outstanding spiritual roots, but eventually become mediocre. Therefore, the higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance have unanimously decided that only the disciples with outstanding performance in actual combat are the real geniuses that are worth cultivating. Exaenegia said seriously, actual combat? How does that work? Everyone didn't understand what was going on. Although there would always be a grand refinement competition before every primordial refinement competition, the content of every grand refinement competition would be different. In the early days, there was a time where everything was cut off, but in the recent times, there were all sorts of mutual competitions. There were internal competitions between various sects, and there were also group competitions between sections. There were all sorts of forms, and every time it would be different. Hee. Improvisation is also an ability that must be tested. Forgive me for keeping you in suspense for the specific content of the contest. The contest will officially begin 3 days later. I'll explain it to you in detail then. You just need to go back and get yourself ready, said Exaenegia with a smile. The people wanted to ask more, but Exaenegia was the leader of the team after all, and he was a golden core stage expert. Since he had said so, they dared not ask further. However, Xue Jianfeng did not have such concerns. He was also a golden core stage expert now, so he did not take Exaenegia seriously. He immediately said in a sarcastic tone, Uncle Exaen, what you said sounds nice, but who knows if you will secretly reveal it to your own people in advance. I'm afraid it's not fair to everyone, right? The people were already muttering in their hearts. After being incited by him, their expressions suddenly changed. Everything else was fine, but they were worried about the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Exaenegia had always had a good image, but no one would believe that he was fair and selfless without any selfishness. At least, the disciples of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island would leak some information in advance. It did not seem to be a big deal, but one was well prepared, while the other was caught off guard. When it came to the real trial competition, their performance was very different. Even if it was just their wishful thinking, the slightest bit of unfairness would be magnified infinitely in this kind of competition and examination. Everyone would feel that they would be the victim, and eventually, the crowd would be so agitated that it would get out of hand. Xue Jianfeng, are you suspecting that I'm unfair? Exaenegia's face darkened, and he snorted coldly. No, I dare not. But I think it's better to be open and transparent about things like the trial competition, so that people won't talk behind my back and suspect me. I'm doing this for your own good, Uncle Xan. What do you guys think? Xue Jianfeng said carelessly. Yes, senior brother Xue is right. The crowd agreed in unison. The crowd was so agitated that Xianijia did not dare to suppress it by force. He snorted with a gloomy face and said, Very well, you're right. But it's a pity that I still can't tell you the content of the competition, because even I don't know it yet. So far I've only set a general tone. As for the specific competition items, the higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance are still discussing it. The competition items will be sent here on time in 3 days, and we'll know then. The crowd immediately looked at each other. Since even the higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance were still discussing it, there was nothing to doubt. Do you have any more questions? It's better to raise them all at once, so that some people won't gossip behind your back again. Xianijia looked at Xue Jianfeng and said. Xue Jianfeng had repeatedly contradicted him, the leading martial uncle. Even if he had a mild temperament, it was impossible for him to swallow his anger. His stance showed that he was going against Xue Jianfeng. If it was someone else, they would have backed off long ago. However, Xue Jianfeng did not put Xianijia in his eyes at all. After all, he had too many things to rely on. Not to mention that he was an early-stage gold core expert. He had the support of the deputy head of the Snow Sword faction for his father. Most importantly, he had the support of this huge and mysterious organization. With his usual arrogance, it would be strange if he still respected Xianijia. I have another question. Does everyone in the Transit Islands have to participate in this trial competition? Xue Jianfeng opened his mouth and asked, but his eyes were on Lin Yi and the others. He did not know that Lin Yi had already made up his mind to let everyone participate in the trial competition. He was afraid that they would not take the bait. Not necessarily. The archaic trials have never forced anyone to participate. The same goes for the trial competition. It's up to the individual whether they want to participate or not. However, if they give up the trial competition, it's equivalent to giving up the opportunity to participate in the archaic trials. Xianijia said indifferently. The answer was not surprising, but it made Xue Jianfeng's face a little pale. The plan that he proposed to the bespectacled doctor had the most basic premise, which was that Lin Yi and the others had to participate in the trial competition. Otherwise, he would be helpless. However, this was different from the mining at the bottom of the sea. After all, to the people present, participating in the trial competition was not an unacceptable obligation. Instead, it was a privilege that most people yearned for from the bottom of their hearts. Chapter 5173. After thinking about it, Xue Jianfeng had no choice but to say, the primordial trial this time is a rare event that happens once in 1,000 years. I've long heard about how good it is, but I don't know if the rumors are true or not. Why don't you take this opportunity to tell us about it, Uncle Master Xan? Xianijia frowned and looked at Xue Jianfeng strangely. What is this guy talking about? What is he trying to do? Seeing Xianijia's indifferent expression, Xue Jianfeng couldn't help but secretly spit. However, he had no other way to lure Lin Yi and the others. Since he couldn't threaten them, he could only tempt them with benefits. He quickly coughed and winked at Bing Wuqing. With Bing Wuqing's character, of course, she wouldn't do such a boring thing with him. However, she remembered that the bespectacled doctor had told her that Xue Jianfeng would be in charge of everything related to the trial competition. Therefore, even he couldn't be too disrespectful, or he would be suspected. Elder Xian, I don't know much about this, and I believe everyone is the same. Why don't we satisfy everyone's curiosity? Bing Wuqing could only bite the bullet and play along. That's right. Since the trial competition is a preparation for the primordial trial, it's reasonable to explain the uniqueness of the primordial trial in advance. At least everyone will have an idea. Uncle Master Xian, you're the Uncle Master leading the team. This is also your responsibility, isn't it? Xue Jianfeng hurriedly rephrased his words again. That's right, Martial Uncle Xian, please tell us about it. The others were also mobilized. At this point, Exionejia had no choice but to say it. Moreover, it wasn't a secret, so it was not a bad idea to satisfy everyone's curiosity. Alright, but this trial ground only happens once in 1,000 years. I only have a rough idea, and it's not accurate. Just take it as a reference for everyone. Exionejia pondered for a while, then said, any place that can be chosen as a trial ground will definitely have treasures of heaven and earth. This trial ground will definitely have more treasures than other places. However, at the same time, the number of guardian beasts and various dangerous factors will also increase. Everyone should be mentally prepared for this. Everyone nodded and hurriedly asked, what are the special benefits of this trial ground? Marshal Uncle Exion, please tell us in detail. As far as I know, the most eye-catching place in this trial ground is a river called the River of Divine Sense. As the name suggests, you can refine your divine sense by staying in it. I believe I don't need to explain the benefits, said Exionejia. River of Divine Knowledge. Everyone's eyes brightened. The Archaic Alliance had always attached great importance to the cultivation of divine sense, and there were very few places that could temper divine sense in the entire ancient Jianghu. Moreover, all of them were in the hands of the 4 great sects and clans. Aside from their core disciples, no one else could get close. They didn't expect that there would be a divine sense river in this trial ground. It was truly worthy of being a once-in-1,000 years opportunity. Not only the crowd, but even Lin couldn't help but feel refreshed. He didn't pay much attention to the cultivation of divine sense in the past, but his mentality was completely different now. It was not only because he was now a primordial spirit, but more importantly, he was increasingly aware of the importance of the cultivation of divine sense. If one's physical strength was the hardware, then the cultivation of the primordial spirit was the software. The two complemented each other, and couldn't be dispensed with. It didn't matter when his realm was still low, but when he reached his current realm, he was about to break through to the magnate realm. If the cultivation of the primordial spirit was still so weak, it would be like losing one of his 2 legs. How could he walk? When his primordial spirit was projected back to the secular world, it was already a rare surprise for Lin Yi to get the star ink charcoal from Lung Lung. He didn't expect that there would be a divine sense river in the ancient trial ground. It was a great opportunity. Previously, he only wanted to explore the ancient Jianghu. Now that he heard Exionejia's words, he suddenly felt excited. Not only that, legend has it that the river of divine sense can not only refine divine sense, but there are also unparalleled treasures buried in the river. Exionejia sighed. Treasures? What treasures? Everyone's curiosity was piqued. I don't know about this. If you're interested, you can try it yourself when you get there. Exionejia smiled faintly. Great. Since the legend is so magical, it must be a peerless treasure. By then, we'll use our own skills to get it. Shui Jianfeng took the opportunity to instigate. Senior brother Shui, you're right. Everyone agreed in unison. Exionejia smiled without saying a word. Although he didn't know what treasures it was, since the legend was passed down after 1,000 years, it was obvious that the treasures must be extraordinary. How could a random disciple in the foundation building stage possess it? Putting aside whether these people had the opportunity and luck, even if they did encounter it, it was hard to tell whether it would be a blessing or a curse. They might even lose their lives. They really didn't know their limits. However, as the junior uncle leading the team, it was not appropriate for him to say these words. Anyway, everyone was just fantasizing. It was not worthwhile to dampen their enthusiasm for such a small matter. While everyone was feeling excited, Shui Jianfeng had been observing the reactions of Lin Yi and the others. In contrast, he was much colder, especially Lin Yi, who did not say a word. He did not seem to be moved at all. Shui Jianfeng muttered to himself. He's still not taking the bait. This guy is quite calm. Therefore, he thought about it and said deliberately, since there are so many benefits in the Archean trials, naturally, only the disciples of the Archean Alliance can participate. Those unrelated people in the secular world don't have this qualification, right? This Exanigia looked at Lenny awkwardly. He did not know what Lenny meant, so it was not appropriate for him to respond in public. Lenny was speechless. Xue Jianfeng's little trick was too obvious and low-level. However, since he had already decided to bring everyone to participate in the Archean trials, he could only go along with him and said, "So what you're saying is that we can't participate?" That's not necessarily true. However, Junior Uncle Xian just said that if anyone doesn't participate in the trials, it means that they have given up on the Archean trials. I don't care about anything else, but I'm afraid that some people will enter through the back door. Xue Jianfeng sneered. As soon as he said this, everyone looked at Lin Yi and the others with suspicious eyes. They could not even tolerate a little bit of unfairness, let alone Lin Yi and the others entering through the back door. Chapter 5174. Lin Yi was waiting for Xue Jianfeng to say that. He smiled. All right, it's just a test. We'll participate. That's more like it. Only then did Xue Jianfeng smile in satisfaction. The rest didn't matter. To him, as long as Lin Yi and the others could participate in the competition, his plan would be halfway to success. All right, we've said what we need to say. Go back and prepare yourselves, Exanigia announced. Everyone dispersed to rest and prepare for the competition in 3 days. Lin Yi, on the other hand, gathered Lingshan and the others together. There's only 3 days left, but as the saying goes, sharpening a spear at the last minute isn't the fastest, but it'll still help. Otherwise, the competition won't be easy to fool. Boss, it's only 3 days, isn't it too late? Qintian smiled bitterly. It's not late, not at all. Lin Yi smiled and said to everyone, as long as you remember what I'm about to teach you, I don't know if it'll be useful for anything else, but it should be useful for the upcoming competition. What is it? 3 days? The group asked curiously. Haha, it's nothing profound. Do you still remember the summary of the practitioner's arts I received a few days ago? Lin Yi smiled. Yes, but those are the arts of the sects on Sky Class Island, right? What's the use? Lingshan asked curiously. Judging from the North Island's Blue Cloud sect and other clues, Sky Class Island and the immemorial small Jianghu are inextricably linked. The same sects in these two places practice basically the same mental cultivation. So although this is a summary of the mental cultivation of the sects in Sky Class Island, it can also be said to be a summary of the mental cultivation of the immemorial sections. Lin Yi explained. The group nodded, but they were still confused. What does that have to do with the test? It's simple. Since we have the arts of the sects, we can use it to figure out the fighting style of the disciples and grasp their strengths and weaknesses. From there, we can come up with the most effective strategy. I've also created some counter moves while studying the manuals, Lin Yi said. Counter moves? The group's eyes lit up. That's right, there aren't many. Each sect only has 2 or 3 moves, and they're not complicated, simple and practical. If you guys can learn these moves in 3 days, the benefits will be obvious. Lin Yi nodded. Fuck. Boss, you're not just making us cram at the last minute, you're bringing a cheat sheet with you. If we learn all of this, we'll be able to beat the disciples of the ancient sects in the test. Qintian said happily. That's not necessarily the case. In order for the counter moves I've taught you to be effective, you need to have a certain level of strength. If the opponent's strength is too much higher than yours, then it won't be effective. But if that's the case, there's no point thinking about it. It's better to just surrender. Lin Yi smiled and said, all right, time's running out. Let's start. All right. Everyone replied in unison. 3 days later, everyone on the transit islands gathered again, including Exanigia. Everyone was staring at the teleportation formation eagerly. Finally, a white light flashed, and a scroll appeared in the portal. Exanigia opened it immediately, and the rules of the test were written on it. Exanigia looked through the entire document and nodded while stroking his beard. He then announced, everyone listen carefully. What I'm about to say is the rules of this trial. If you miss a word, it'll be your loss. Yes. The group listened attentively. First, the test will be divided into 8 teams. Those below foundation establishment will be in one team. Early stage foundation establishment, peak early stage foundation establishment, mid-stage foundation establishment, peak mid-stage foundation establishment, late-stage foundation establishment, peak late-stage foundation establishment, and perfect stage foundation establishment will be in their own team. Everyone, please take your seats. Now please get into your teams, Xianijia ordered, and the group began to line up according to their strength. At this moment, no one would play any tricks. Firstly, they did not know the intention of such a team. Secondly, there were no secrets between the brothers in the sect. They knew each other's strength and realm clearly. Moreover, Xianijia, a gold core stage master, was watching them. It was impossible to fool them even if they wanted to. Leni gave the group a look, and Lingshan and the others nodded, walking into the group of early phase foundations. This caused quite a commotion. A lot of people didn't realize that they'd all succeeded, thinking that they were still sky-class full mastery. But they were just surprised for a moment, not really taking Lingshan and the others seriously. After all, even if they succeeded in their foundation establishment, they were just the weakest early stage. They posed no threat to Archaic Alliance disciples, so naturally, they didn't have to worry about them. As for Leni himself, while he was the elder master of the Green Cloud sect, that identity was only useful in front of people like Xianijia. The Archaic Alliance didn't recognize that. Being able to recognize him as a member of the Archaic Alliance was already giving face to the Green Cloud sect. If he wanted to participate in the Archaic test, he had to pass the test like everyone else. Leni didn't mind at all. He walked into the group of perfect stage practitioners. No one below Golden Core would be his match, no matter what the test was. But there was one exception. It was Xue Jianfeng, who was smiling coldly at the side. This guy had been following the professor's orders and didn't show his strength. On the surface, he was still a perfect stage practitioner. He couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. If it weren't for the strict order from above not to touch Lin Yi, he would have killed Lin Yi to avenge himself. I can't kill him, but this is a fair opportunity. I can use this chance to beat him up. Even the higher-ups can't say anything about it, Xue Jianfeng thought. In the blink of an eye, everyone had lined up. Only two people stood outside. One was Xianijia, and the other was Bing Wuqing. While they weren't the leader, they were still Golden Core practitioners. There was no point in them participating in the test. All right, I will now announce the rules of the test. It's simple. Every team will draw lots to fight each other. There will be a round every 2 days for 10 consecutive days. And there will be a total of 5 rounds. As long as you win 3 rounds, you'll automatically qualify for the test, Xianijia announced. Chapter 5175. On the other hand, if one couldn't even win 3 matches, then no matter how superior one's spirit root was, it would be meaningless. There were indeed times when a genius would be buried, but if one couldn't even win 3 out of 5 matches, then he would be a complete piece of trash, and it would be meaningless to talk about anything else. After observing the crowd's reaction, Xianijia continued, "Of course, this rule only applies to most of the ordinary disciples. For those genius disciples with extraordinary strength, other than winning 3 out of 5 battles, there's another easier option, which is to challenge someone of a higher level." Challenge someone of a higher level? Everyone was shocked. This was something unimaginable for ordinary disciples, but it was also the label of a genius disciple. Those who could challenge someone of a higher level were not easy to deal with. Naturally, they were considered as genius disciples. That's right. You can challenge anyone of a higher level. There's no limit to the number of times, and the other party can't refuse. As long as one of you can succeed once, then you won't have to participate in the regular competition and will automatically qualify for the trial. Xianijia nodded. Everyone's expressions were different. Apart from the normal rules, there was also a special rule. This grand competition was well thought out. It was clear that the higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance attached great importance to this. Because of this, they had to think of a way to perform well. This wasn't just related to the primeval smelting trials. It was also related to their future in the Archaic Alliance. Marshal Uncle Exion, may I ask, what will happen if you can't challenge someone of a higher level, or win 3 out of 5 battles in the regular competition? Everyone couldn't help but be worried. That means you don't qualify for the trial. You'll be sent back to the archaic underworld after the trial in the secular world. Of course, even if you win 3 out of 5 battles, you have to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm before the archaic trials begins. Otherwise, you'll be automatically removed from the Archaic Alliance, and naturally, you won't be qualified to participate in the archaic trials. Exionigia explained. As soon as this was said, everyone looked at each other. According to Exionigia's explanation, wouldn't it mean that half of the people would be eliminated? Even though the grand competition would be held in the primeval trials in the past, and some people would be eliminated every single time, it would at most be a formality, and some people at the bottom of the rankings would be eliminated. There had never been a precedent of half of the people being eliminated. After all, the grand competition was only the prelude to the primeval trials, and it wasn't the primeval competition, so how could it be so serious? Marshal Uncle Exion, this is the grand competition, and not the primordial grand competition. There's no need to go so far, right? It's not normal. However, the primordial trial this time is a once-in-a-thousand-years event. The degree of danger is far more than usual. It's reasonable for the trial competition to be stricter. This is to be responsible for your safety, Exionigia said seriously. But if it's really for safety reasons, it's better to let us, the stronger disciples, go. There's no need to make it so complicated, right? The one who spoke was a late Foundation Establishment disciple. The other stronger disciples of the Archaic Alliance echoed him, all of them filled with righteous indignation. Now, with the rules of 3 wins out of 5 duels, the biggest victims were none other than them. Disciples like them, who were at the late stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, or even higher, should have the qualifications to participate in the primeval trials. However, once this rule was announced, even amongst them, a group of people would inevitably be eliminated. Think about it. If even dignified disciples at the peak of the Foundation Establishment realm didn't have the chance to participate in the primeval trials, wouldn't they become the laughingstock of others if word of this got out? Hee. This is the unanimous decision of the higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance. Do any of you have any objections? Exionigia's words stunned everyone. No matter how dissatisfied they would never dare to go against the higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance. Otherwise, not only would their future be in danger, they might even lose their lives. Moreover, although they were not weak, the ones who were really dissatisfied with this rule were only those disciples who were at the bottom of the same level. The truly outstanding core disciples of each sect would not care about this little difficulty. To put it bluntly, only the weak would complain like this. Since they were the weak, how could they have the confidence to go against the higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance? If it were Bing Wuqing, facing these people's complaints, she would at most snort coldly, and would not even bother to explain. However, Exionigia was much more honest. Seeing that everyone seemed to be dissatisfied, he thought about it, and decided to explain a little. I've already said that the purpose of this trial competition is to select disciples who have both strength and potential. Moreover, the rules of the competition are not that strict. If you really meet the requirements, it won't be difficult to qualify for the trials. However, if you only have the level but no potential, then there's nothing much to say. Instead of going to the primeval trials and hindering other disciples with more potential, it's better for you to return to the primeval Jianghu as soon as possible, said Exionigia. His words were not very pleasant to hear, but it was the truth. From the perspective of each primeval sect, the value of a disciple with Foundation Establishment consummation at the bottom was far less than that of a disciple with outstanding aptitude in the early stage of foundation establishment consummation. However, if these two people were to go to the primeval trials at the same time, the disciple with foundation establishment consummation would definitely benefit. After all, under normal circumstances, a disciple in the early stage of foundation establishment consummation would not be a match for a disciple with foundation establishment consummation. Therefore, it would easily lead to a situation that would be extremely troublesome for the higher-ups of all primeval sects. In the primeval trials, those talented disciples with outstanding aptitude, who were worthy of being nurtured, would find it difficult to advance. Instead, their opportunities would be snatched away by high-level disciples with no potential at the bottom. However, even the higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance could not force that only those talented disciples could obtain the opportunities. Even if the other disciples were of a higher level and stronger strength, they had to stand aside. If such an inhumane rule was really announced, many ordinary disciples would have long rebelled. That was why there was such an unprecedented rule. Not only could it be used to select outstanding disciples of different levels, but it could also be used to eliminate those mediocre disciples who only had high levels, but were actually at the bottom. It could be said that it was killing two birds with one stone to clear the obstacles for those talented disciples who were truly worthy of being nurtured. At this point, even if everyone was unwilling in their hearts, they didn't dare say anything more. After all, the matter had already been decided, and it would be useless no matter how much they grumbled. Instead, it would bring trouble to themselves. So it was better to make use of this time to properly plan for the upcoming grand competition. Chapter 5176. Everyone looked at each other, and no one spoke for a while. Challenging someone of a higher level was no small matter, not to mention that the bird that sticks out gets shot first. In this kind of situation, whoever was the first to step out to challenge someone of a higher level would be in the limelight. But at the same time, they would also be under a great deal of pressure. This was especially true for the high-level disciple they challenged. He would definitely go all out. Otherwise, if he was defeated by someone of a higher level in front of everyone, he would not be able to face anyone in the future. Lin Yi was a foundation perfection practitioner, and he was already the highest level in the tournament. Naturally, there was no such thing as challenging someone of a higher level. As for Ling Shan and the others, they were only at foundation establishment not long ago, and naturally wouldn't think of challenging someone of a higher level. As a result, they waited patiently for the lots to be drawn. Half an hour passed, and still no one stood out to challenge someone of a higher level. Xanijia coughed dryly, and was about to announce the draw when someone finally spoke up. "Uncle Xian, why don't I try?" The crowd went into an uproar at the words, and all eyes focused on a young man. He had delicate features and a calm aura around him. He looked like he had nothing to do with the world. But if one looked closely, they would realize that there was an indescribable aura hidden within his calmness. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh to himself. This kid was extraordinary. Ling Tianyu of the Thousand Blades sect, who would you like to challenge? Xiniji asked. Facing this Ling Tianyu, even he, as the leader of the group, didn't dare to be careless. One had to know that this kid was the young master of the Thousand Blades sect, and this wasn't as simple as being a second-generation practitioner. Ever since the previous head of the Thousand Blades sect died in the hands of a heretic, Ling Tianyu had become the head of the Thousand Blades sect at a young age. Even though he was only at the peak of the late phase of foundation establishment, he still received the support of the entire sect. This was not only because he had the bloodline of the former sect master, but also because the ancient Jianghu was a world where strength was respected. Without strength, bloodline inheritance was just a joke. The reason why Ling Tianyu was able to gain the recognition of the Thousand Blades faction, with his cultivation, at the peak of the late foundation establishment realm, was naturally not because of absolute strength, but because of his incomparable talent. It was rumored that the strongest foundation establishment cultivator of the Archaic Alliance was Xue Jianfeng of the Snow Sword faction, but that was only because Xue Jianfeng was very high profile. On the other hand, as the young master of the Thousand Blades faction, Ling Tianyu was extremely low-key and rarely fought with others. Only the inner disciples of the Thousand Blades faction knew a thing or two about him. If the two of them really had a chance to fight, it would be very difficult to say who would win. On the contrary, more people would favor Yin Tianyu, as he was the uncrowned king. This will be interesting. Ling Tianyu will definitely challenge Xue Jianfeng. This is the battle for the #1 foundation establishment cultivator of the Ancient Alliance. Everyone couldn't help but be excited. Ling Tianyu was an expert at the peak of the late foundation establishment realm. He could only challenge those at the peak of the foundation establishment realm, and his representative was Xue Jianfeng. Who was stronger between Xue Jianfeng and Ling Tianyu? This was a point that had been debated endlessly. It was a pity that the two of them had never met each other. Now they could finally have a showdown in front of everyone. It seemed that this kid really wanted to challenge him. Xue Jianfeng muttered to himself. To be honest, if he was still an expert at the peak of the foundation establishment realm, he might really be a little afraid. After all, Ling Tianyu was no small matter. But now that he was at the early gold core realm, there was nothing to worry about. No matter how powerful Ling Tianyu was, could he, as a mere peak of the late foundation establishment realm, challenge an early gold core realm? What a joke. Martial Uncle Xian, the person I want to challenge is him. Ling Tianyu smiled slightly, and his gaze fell on a person. This time, the crowd was in an uproar again. The person he wanted to challenge was not Xue Jianfeng, but Lin Yi. You want to challenge me? Lin Yi was also a little stunned. Yes, this should be fine, right? Ling Tianyu confirmed with his trademark gentle smile on his face. Yes. Xian nodded. He didn't know why Ling Tianyu suddenly wanted to challenge Lin Yi. But according to the rules of the competition, there was no problem. Moreover, Lin Yi couldn't refuse. Can I ask why you chose me? Lin Yi asked curiously. It was not strange for someone like Ling Tianyu to take the path of challenging those at a higher level. But instead of those disciples of the Archaic Alliance, he chose him. Did he think that he was a pushover? Forgive me for being presumptuous, but I am purely curious. Ling Tianyu nodded slightly. Curious? That's a little interesting. Lin Yi couldn't help but be amused. He turned to Xian and said, Then can we start now? Yes, we can. Only after the challenge is over will we start the competition by drawing lots. Xian nodded and then reminded in a low voice. Martial Uncle, this Ling Tianyu is not to be trifled with. You must be careful. If you lose to someone at a higher level, not only will you lose face, you will also lose the qualification to participate in the competition. Although this sentence was not said clearly, everyone knew that it was the truth. In this grand competition, even disciples who were at a disadvantage in a battle of the same level would be disqualified. If they were defeated by someone who was a level higher than them, then there was no need to say anything more. I know. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. This Ling Tianyu seemed a little unfathomable. Unfortunately, he was in existence comparable to a magnate realm expert. No matter how strong Ling Tianyu's aptitude was, he was just a seedling in Lin Yi's eyes. There was really nothing to worry about. Challenging someone of a higher level would attract a lot of attention, and everyone retreated to the side, leaving Lin Yi and Ling Tianyu alone. Then, sorry for offending you. Ling Tianyu cupped his hands with a smile, and then slowly took out a silk belt from his bosom in front of everyone. Everyone was puzzled. Could this silk belt be his weapon? This Ling Tianyu is said to be a god. Why would he use such a sissy weapon? Everyone couldn't help but look at each other. That's right. Our Archaic Alliance has always attached importance to weapons, and all the cultivation of the Thousand Blades faction is based on weapons. As the young master of the Thousand Blades faction, Ling Tianyu should have inherited a divine weapon. Why would he use a sissy silk belt? It doesn't look like a big deal. Someone frowned and muttered. Not only them, but even Bing Wuqing, Xue Jianfeng, and Xian were staring at the ribbon fluttering in the air. They were all experts in the gold core stage, but none of them would underestimate Ling Tianyu. After all, he was someone who could become the leader of the Thousand Blades sect. Chapter 5177. As far as the disciples of the Thousand Blades faction were concerned, even ordinary disciples in the Foundation establishment realm could control more than a dozen weapons at the same time. Those with better aptitude could control dozens of weapons at the same time. However, it was very difficult for them to advance further. When they reached the nascent soul realm, they could at most control 100 weapons at the same time. Lenny had only roughly studied the Thousand Blades sect's practitioner's arts, but he knew where the difficulties lay. The biggest difficulty lay in multitasking. Controlling each weapon required a part of one's attention, and it wasn't easy for a normal person to do two things at the same time. Controlling 100 weapons at the same time required 100 multitasking. Even an idiot could figure out how difficult this was. It was definitely at an inhuman level. However, the Ling Tianyu in front of him was puzzling. He did not show a lot of weapons like the other disciples of the Thousand Blades faction. Instead, he only showed a ribbon that seemed to be harmless. What did this mean? Was he hiding his strength? Or was this inconspicuous ribbon his trump card? Lenny did not move. He just stood there quietly, waiting for Ling Tianyu's next move. At his level, it was impossible for him to treat the other party as a real threat. However, he would not underestimate the enemy. He was observing Ling Tianyu and coping with all changes by remaining unchanged. While Lenny was observing Ling Tianyu was also observing his reaction. As he said, he was indeed very curious about Lenny. A powerful primordial spirit expert, the martial granduncle of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, Lenny was a mystery to all the disciples of the primordial age. Although Ling Tianyu had not made any moves in the past 10 months, he felt that it was necessary to understand Lin Yi's background in both the short and long term. Otherwise, there would be one more uncontrollable factor in the upcoming primordial trial. Suddenly, the ribbon that was fluttering in the air became taut with a swish. Then, with a piercing sound, it shot toward Lin Yi like a sharp arrow. Everyone's expression changed when they saw this. To be able to have such power, it seemed that this ribbon was indeed not an ordinary item. Facing the ribbon that was rushing toward him, Lin Yi was still unmoved. Until the ribbon was less than half a foot away from him, he stretched out 2 fingers and calmly clamped it. Xinijia nodded secretly. This scene seemed ordinary, but it was not easy to be as calm as Lin Yi. At least, no one present could do it. Even he, a master in the early stage of Gold Core realm, dared not guarantee it. However, the ribbon did not stop after being clamped. Instead, it wriggled wildly like a snake. But in the eyes of others, it was just a futile struggle. After all, how could a soft ribbon do any damage? However, Lin Yi's expression changed. He chose to let go of it without hesitation. Almost at the same time when he let go, a large number of flying needles suddenly shot out from the ribbon. This scene was so sudden that everyone present gasped and looked horrified. Almost all of them were deceived by the inconspicuous shape of the ribbon. They did not expect that there were so many flying needles hidden in the ribbon. If it had been them, they would have already been pierced by the flying needles and died, without a burial ground, with just one move. It was a pity that Ling Tianyu was facing Lin Yi. Even if these flying needles were hidden very well, and almost integrated with the ribbon, it was difficult to be detected by the divine sense under normal circumstances. However, Lin Yi not only had a far more sensitive divine sense than ordinary people, but also a beast-like sense of danger. If he did not detect them in advance, how could he suddenly let go of the ribbon? What a powerful movement technique! Ling Tianyu's eyes brightened. What shocked him was not that Lin Yi could detect them in advance, but that Lin Yi could calmly dodge the sudden attack of the flying needles at such a close distance and come out unscathed. With Ling Tianyu's identity, his sparring partners in the Thousand Blades sect were at least in the Gold Core stage. However, even if they were experts in the Gold Core stage, they could at most block his flying needles with their protective genuine qi. No one had ever been able to dodge it completely like Lin Yi. Such a movement technique was simply unheard of and unseen. Likewise, to be able to practice the legendary flying blades of 1,000 blades, Your Excellency, is also not simple. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Flying blades of 1,000 blades? Hearing this, everyone was shocked again. They carefully counted the number of flying needles flying in the air at this moment. Only then did they exclaim in shock, 999 flying needles, and that ribbon. It really is a flying blades of 1,000 blades. How is this possible? Isn't the 1,000 blades flying together just an illusory legend? Ling Tianyu can actually do it. Even though they had seen it with their own eyes, they still felt it was incredible. One had to know that the 100 blades simultaneous release was already very impressive. Even the experts of the 1,000 blades faction had to be at least nascent soul realm old monsters to be able to do it. Multitasking wasn't something that could be practiced just because one wanted to. If one didn't have enough aptitude, it would be useless even if one practiced for thousands of years. As for the 1,000 blades simultaneous release, that required one to multitask 1,000 times. The difficulty was more than 10,000 times that of multitasking. This wasn't something that humans could do, but the truth was right in front of them. Ling Tianyu, who was merely at the peak of the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, had managed to achieve the legendary 1,000 blades flying together. Was he even human? No wonder everyone in the 1,000 blades sect supports him to be the sect leader. He's such an amazing genius. No wonder. Xi and Ijia finally understood. Regarding the matter of Ling Tianyu becoming the sect leader of the 1,000 blades sect, the entire Archaic Alliance had different guesses, including the higher-ups of the various archaic sects and families. No matter how talented he was, it was too childish to let Ling Tianyu, who was only at the peak of the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, become the sect leader of a sect. But now that he had seen the 1,000 blades flying together with his own eyes, Xi and Ijia finally understood that the 1,000 blades sect was not stupid. Instead, it was because they had found a powerful backer. Once this Ling Tianyu grew up, no one in the entire Archaic Alliance would be his opponent. At that time, the 1,000 blades sect would definitely sweep away the declining trend and have a promising future. Not only Xi and Ijia, but even Bing Wuqing, who was next to him, was moved. Ling Tianyu, who had achieved the 1,000 blades flying together, could not be measured by common sense. Even if he was only at the peak of the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, he was enough to be on an equal footing with experts in the gold core stage. If time passed, even they would have to look up to him. Chapter 5178. He had always thought that he was worthy of his title as the number one in the Foundation establishment realm and could suppress Ling Tianyu. Now that he thought about it, it was really ridiculous. In front of the 1,000 flying blades, he, the so-called number one in the Foundation establishment realm, was nothing. No, this Ling Tianyu must be eliminated while he was still young. Otherwise, he would definitely be a great trouble in the future. Although he was proud, Xue Jianfeng was not a fool. It was true that he was an early-stage gold core realm expert, had a father who was the deputy head of the Snow Sword faction, and had a mysterious and powerful backer in the center. But all of these were nothing in front of Ling Tianyu's 1,000 flying blades. Such a threat must be nipped in the bud. Your Excellency has good eyesight. I admire you. Ling Tianyu was slightly taken aback. He didn't expect Lin Yi's observation skills to be so sharp that he could count the number of flying needles in an instant. If it wasn't for his reminder, the others might not have realized this so quickly. You're too polite. I didn't expect to see the glory of the 1,000 flying blades today. The Archaic Alliance is really full of talents. But it's a pity. Lin Yi shook his head meaningfully. What's a pity? Ling Tianyu looked at him and asked. Everyone present was also curious. This was the legendary 1,000 flying blades. What was there to pity about? Of course it's a pity that your current realm is too low. Given time, you can indeed become an expert. As for now, you're still far from that level, Lin Yi said bluntly in front of everyone. Everyone looked at him, thinking that this guy really knew how to show off. They didn't know that what Lin Yi said was the truth. Ling Tianyu's 1,000 flying blades was indeed real. But his 1,000 flying blades were all insignificant flying needles. All of them added up didn't even weigh half a gene. Even if it was the 1,000 flying blades, it was only the weakest version. It was fine to scare others, but it was unrealistic to scare Lin Yi. Moreover, with the strength of Lin Yi's body, let alone the weakest version. Even if the 1,000 flying blades were real divine weapons, he would at most be a formidable opponent. How could he be scared? Really? Then I'll have to ask for your guidance. Although Ling Tianyu still had a gentle expression on his face, he was, after all, the young master of the 1,000 Blades sect, a supreme figure who had mastered the flying blades technique. It would be strange if his arrogance wasn't provoked by Lin Yi's words. Go ahead. Lin Yi smiled faintly and made a gesture of invitation. However, in the eyes of the people around him, it was pure pretentiousness. Ling Tianyu's expression froze. His 10 fingers moved slightly, and the 999 flying needles floating in the air instantly condensed on the ribbon. The ribbon twisted back and forth, and the tip twisted into the shape of a snake's head. At first glance, it looked exactly like a hydralisk with long thorns all over its body. The hydralisk danced rapidly in the air, whistling fiercely. Its momentum was terrifying, and the onlookers could not help but tremble with fear. Even Xianijia, a master in the early stage of Gold Core, felt his eyelids twitching. Only Lin Yi, who was in the field, was not in a hurry. Instead, the corner of his mouth slightly raised to reveal a playful smile. After hovering for a moment, the hydralisk suddenly pounced on Lin Yi from behind. Its speed was extremely fast, but Lin Yi was faster. He easily dodged it with a flash. It's only Martial Granduncle. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't be able to dodge this attack. Xianijia commented. This was not a compliment to Lin Yi, but the truth. The attack of the hydralisk was so fast that even with his body movement, it was impossible for him to avoid it easily. Looking at the whole field, there was no other person except Lin Yi. No matter how fast your body movement is, can you avoid the divine dragon's tail whip? Ling Tianyu was extremely confident. The hydralisk was covered with flying needles. In the face of such an attack, ordinary people's first reaction was not to face it head-on. They were not only afraid of pain, but also afraid of poison. Therefore, Lin Yi's response was completely within his expectation. The hydralisk was more than 3 feet long, and it had already surrounded Lin Yi. Therefore, no matter how Lin Yi dodged, it was impossible for him to avoid this long-prepared move. Divine Dragon's Tail Whip? Lin Yi smiled and released a murderous aura of the 5 elements. Why don't we see whose dragon is more powerful? The dragon roared, and the murderous aura of the 5 elements immediately met the hydralisk. Then with a loud bang, the hydralisk was torn into pieces, and the flying needles fell to the ground. How could this be? Ling Tianyu couldn't help but turn pale. He was very confident in his move. Even an expert in the early stage of Gold Core realms said that it was difficult to deal with the Divine Dragon's Tail Whip. He didn't expect that it would be easily broken by Lin Yi. Moreover, it was a domineering way of meeting force with force. More importantly, it was only a stream of genuine qi. How could there be such a terrifying genuine qi in the world? Was this person really only at the peak of Foundation establishment? Only Lin Yi himself was not surprised. No matter how powerful the 1,000 blades flying together was, could it be more powerful than the murderous aura of the 5 elements? There is always someone better than you. There is nothing strange about this, right? Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, if the 1,000 blades flying together only has this little strength, it is too disappointing. In his view, the hydralisk that Ling Tianyu made was not ordinary. At first glance, it seemed to be in line with the principle that the weapons of the 1,000 Blades sect complemented each other. But this principle was only for ordinary disciples. For a genius like Ling Tianyu, it was too mediocre. If the legendary 1,000 Blades flying together was really used in this way, it would be useless. Really? My skills are not good enough. I have embarrassed myself in front of you. Ling Tianyu looked as calm as usual at this time, without the slightest hint of worry. However, the movements of his hands did not stop at all. After the flying needles fell, they did not recondense on the ribbon. Instead, they simply formed their own formation. At first glance, they looked like a dense swarm of bees. Although the attacks between them seemed messy, they cooperated with each other, as if there was some kind of profound military strategy. Oh, Arrangement, this is a little interesting. Lin Yi controlled the murderous aura of the 5 elements to deal with these flying needles with great interest. The more he fought, the more shocked he became. This Ling Tianyu's talent was really very high. In terms of power, although the flying needles were far inferior to the hydralisk, they had become more difficult to deal with now that they had broken up into smaller groups. Just a little interesting. Ling Tianyu smiled. Before his voice died away, the swarm of flying needle bees, which had been big and small just a moment ago, became even more scattered. Almost every flying needle was fighting on its own. The power of each attack became weaker, but at the same time, it became more frequent and harder to guard against. Chapter 5179. If these flying needles were poisoned, Lin Yi would have been a corpse long ago. Xue Jianfeng sneered at the scene. For him, both Lin Yi and Ling Tianyu were targets that had to be eliminated. Unfortunately, because of the order from the higher-ups of the center, he did not have the guts to touch Lin Yi at all. Ling Tianyu was the lifeblood of the Thousand Blades faction. If he touched this guy, the entire Thousand Blades faction would have to fight him to the death. With his current strength, it was tantamount to setting himself on fire. Humph! The Thousand Blades faction used to be one of the 4 major sects and families. Although it has declined now, it is still a decent faction. As the head of the Thousand Blades faction, how could Ling Tianyu use such insidious and despicable means? Xianijia glanced at Xue Jianfeng disdainfully. A gentleman would not do such a thing, but it was obvious that Xue Jianfeng did not feel any pressure at all. Xue Jianfeng snorted disdainfully. If it was in the past, he would still care about his image, but after being crippled twice, his temperament had changed greatly. Especially now that he was secretly relying on the center, he would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. Sinister methods like poison were naturally not a problem. At this time, Bing Wuqing suddenly said, "Even if the needles are really poisoned, Ling Tianyu cannot hurt Lin Yi at all." What? Everyone was shocked when they heard this. After a closer look, they finally found that although the 999 flying needles of Ling Tianyu had surrounded Lin Yi so tightly that it was impossible to defend against them, so far, Lin Yi had not been pierced by a single needle. 90% of the flying needles were dodged by Lin Yi's body movement. As for the remaining 10%, every time they got close to Lin Yi, they were blocked by his protective genuine qi, and could not advance an inch, let alone cause any damage. What a strong protective genuine qi! Everyone was shocked. At the level of Foundation Establishment consummation, the strength of the protective genuine qi was indeed strong enough to block ordinary punches, palms, and blunt weapons. But Ling Tianyu's flying needles were almost the natural enemy of protective genuine qi. It only took 1% of protective genuine qi to defend against ordinary attacks, but 10% of protective genuine qi was needed to defend against flying needles. Lin Yi was just a peak Foundation Establishment expert. He wasn't even a golden core stage expert, so how could his protective qi be so strong? TSK, no matter how strong his protective qi is, what's the point? Even if Lin Yi can hold on for a while, he won't be able to withstand it for long. Sooner or later, he will be exhausted to death by Ling Tianyu. In my opinion, Lin Yi, this salted fish, can't turn over a new leaf. How dare he call himself the martial granduncle of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island? This time, he was successfully challenged by someone who was a level higher than him, and he was the first one. You've really lost all your face. Xue Jianfeng took the opportunity to ridicule. Xianijia frowned, but did not refute. At least from the current situation, Lin Yi was not in a good situation. As long as he could not get rid of the attack of 999 flying needles, he could only rely on his protective genuine qi to fight with Ling Tianyu. Moreover, every time Ling Tianyu consumed a little bit of his protective genuine qi, he would consume 10 or even 100 of his protective genuine qi. Bing Wuqing, on the other hand, was full of disapproval, but she did not show it on her face. After all, he had fought with Lin Yi before. Even he, a golden core late-stage expert, couldn't do anything to Lin Yi, let alone Ling Tianyu, who was only at the peak of the foundation establishment late stage. As for Lingshan and the others, they were even less worried. Even if they could not see anything with their level, they had absolute confidence in Lin Yi. 1,000 flying needles were nothing. As time passed, Lin Yi was still trapped in the attack of 999 flying needles. The situation was as tense as before. This kind of battle of attrition was within everyone's expectations. However, what surprised them was that Lin Yi had been holding on until now without a scratch. What was even more ridiculous was that he seemed to be at ease, and did not seem to be at the end of his rope. This kid could really hold on. Xue Jianfeng furrowed his brows. Compared to Ling Tianyu, who was a potential formidable opponent, Xue Jianfeng's brows furrowed. Compared to Ling Tianyu, who was a potential rival, he was more inclined to humiliate Lin Yi. After all, there was a bloody feud between him and Lin Yi. He immediately said, "Uncle Xian, it's almost the time for 2 incense sticks to burn. Are we going to let them continue like this? It's completely meaningless. There should be a time limit, right?" There is no time limit. There are only 2 results in all the battles of the trial competition. Either the winner is decided directly, or someone admits defeat. There is no third possibility. Xianijia glanced at him and curled his lips. You're talking about a normal competition, but this is a cross-level challenge. We can't keep dragging on, can we? Are we going to let everyone wait like this? It's been 2 incense sticks time. Anyone can tell who is stronger. Uncle Xian, are you being selfish and siding with the Green Cloud Sex people from the North Island? Xue Jianfeng said in a strange tone. Oh, who is stronger and who is weaker? Why can't I see it? Why don't you Xue Jianfeng tell us? Xianijia snorted. Of course. Xue Jianfeng was about to say that Lin Yi was obviously going to lose. But Lin Yi suddenly flashed and appeared in front of Ling Tianyu. Xue Jianfeng was speechless, and the others were also in an uproar.